for another amazing month of the Cartoonist Kayfabe ringside seats, Comix Symposium. I'd like to welcome everyone here this month. We've got two amazing guests who have joined us right now. We've got Christian J. Meesimo, aka Meesimo, Christian J. Meesy, aka Meesimo, and we've got Shelly Bond, two amazing guests. So we're going to talk to Meesimo first, and then we're going to talk to Shelly, but I'm sure in the middle it's going to merge into one amazing conversation. So first, let's get these hosts, the host posts with the most. So Rick, what's up, dude? What you been up to? Tell us what you're working on, man.
What's up, everyone? Rick Lopez. I'm currently working on the third issue of my series, The Power. It's a 4-issue series about a boy creating a comic only to discover a realm beyond space and time within his own mind. So it's kind of that whole ethereal plane we go to while we're working on everything. It's just about that whole process. This is a cover for the third issue. Almost ready to color it all together. Every other weekend, I do a strip called Cosmic Cat over on Next Panel Press. Eli is a part of it, Craig CK, a bunch of other artists. You could follow us on Instagram or Facebook. On our story highlights, you could go through and read all of our series from start to finish, or at least where they are now. Yeah, and then you could follow me at Instagram at Doomdays.
Sweet. Yeah, man, of course. At Doomdays, always an amazing follow. All right, and we got Craig coming up here. What's up, Craig? What you up to, bud?
Not much. Just working on Ghost Agents stuff for Rocco, which is posted on Next Panel Press that Rick mentioned. I just finished the third mini issue of Murder, She Wrought, the story of Jessica Fletcher, actual killer in Cabot Cove.
Yeah, can't wait to read this, man.
Tattooing my hands off, it seems. So been busy, really busy. But other than that, same old stuff, man.
Great, dude. I can now officially attest that now that I've met Craig live in person and been tattooed by him, that he is a great tattoo artist. So
thanks, buddy.
Yeah, man, it's healing up nice. I'm excited to go swimming soon. All right, so I'd like to welcome everyone here. I'll do a quick plug for myself. I am. You can always find everything about me on CosmicLionProductions.com. Wizard 2 is still out there. Let's see, do I have one close? I do, as always. Wizard 2 is still available on CosmicLionProductions.com. It's 420 pages of pure comics love. Comics from around the globe to your home. It's like a Cartoonist Kayfabe mailbag episode right on your desk at your favorite reading table. So if you're looking to write some comics or be more comics, this is a great place to start. Wizard, with a cover by the one and only Cancor and colored by Sam J. Royal. And you can also find me on all my podcasts, especially the Grendel Read-Through podcast, The Devil in Detail, which is on YouTube. And you can find us on Instagram at Grendelcast. We've got a new ep coming out tomorrow where we're starting the War Child, the Dark Horse era of Grendel, coming out of Kamiko and the not so great ending to that era of Grendel, but the comics that we loved stayed as amazing. All right, so let's segue over to talking with the man, the myth, the legend, Christian J. Meesimo, who's got a brand new book shipping to all his Kickstarter peeps. Time Shopper. This book is insane, dude. I loved it. I read it the other day. I absolutely loved it. I got to visit Meesimo and Tony Flex, the writer, and the amount of amazing stuff that they put together for this Kickstarter, the amount of these historical elements, like guys, they remade a cover for Action Comics #1 and bought up a bunch of reprints and put their new cover on. They got into a print of Topps baseball cards and made Mickey Mantle cards with Time Shopper in the background. Meesimo, tell us about you guys deciding all that amazing add-on extra stuff for the Kickstarter and just like how you made it all happen.
It's funny. Those are actually just things that we found while traveling through time.
Oh, right, exactly. You're right.
So, the original Mickey Mantle card, which now has Carl the Time Shopper photobombing in the background, as well as the Action Comics #1 with Carl photobombing in the background.
Yeah.
And Batman trying to get rid of a bomb in the background. So that's all to Tony Fleece's genius, and it's awesome for me to see Tony, who's hilarious in person, like he's been doing cute, funny animal comics for years and years, and finally making a huge splash with Stray Dogs. Yeah. And then with Time Shopper, you see his comedic side, which is, to me, his natural, affable storytelling side that all of us that know him see every day. But it's cool to see that come out in the form of the story for Time Shopper.
That was so awesome. So he basically, I mean, he obviously came up with the gist of this book.
I want to, sorry to interrupt you, but I just want to say it's an honor to be mentioned in the same sentence, much less the same Zoom as Shelly Bond, who's awesome, and happy to, honored to be here.
Back at you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm honored to be a guest.
Oh yeah. All right, let's continue on around with the hostess with the mostesses. The hostesses with the mostesses? That doesn't sound right. Rick and Craig, what you guys thinking? Who wants to go next? And then we'll open it up to the audience as we always do. So guys, get your questions ready. I can read a quick.
Go first.
All right, let me read this quick comment from Rocco here in the chat, who's sitting back, as he said. Meesimo is the wolf man, like Winston Wolf. You call him when you're in a pinch, and he goes pure hog wild on TCB from A to Z, just like the wolf man when he comes to save the wonders. The Oneaters? Oh no, the wonders. He can always get you out of a fix if you're trying to make the dream you carry of a comic into a physical object, just at the moment you're about to give up. I totally agree with that. Making comics and working with Meesimo is insane. You can, hey, if someone's not making that page as fast as you want them to, you can always get Meesimo. All right, let's go over to you, Rick.
What's up, dude?
How's it going, man?
How's it going, man?
Is that third issue coming?
Is
that it right there in your drawing?
It's coming along. It's almost, yeah, I'm almost ready to color it. So we're getting there. Thank you, by the way. I mean, like we're all blown away. Like anyone that knows your art, we're all blown away with your art and like your speed and everything. And I remember like you even like made a comment, like, yeah, I'm the slow one. Like you're the slow, like out of all your friends, like when with all your other caricature buddies. It's like it's insane. But I always want to know like what, like how did you even get to that point? Like were you like what were you doing before caricaturing, and like what led you to that? Because it's like, I don't know, it makes you so fast, and it's crazy like how fast you are and how rendered is the thing is, because like there's people that can be fast in their own way, but like just the level of detail that you're able to put down like always blows me away. And I just really want to know like how do you become Meesimo?
Thanks, man. Yeah, caricatures was drawing live caricatures is a huge part to getting faster at drawing, because you have to draw, or you have to put out a fast drawing in under 5 minutes, or else they'll find somebody else that can do it. So the pressure of that, you just have to draw. I like to say you have to draw faster than the speed of second thought. It's like you can't intellectualize it. You just have to look and put the lines down. So that carried over into my comic making and reading interviews with like Todd McFarlane when he's doing Hulk, and Spider-Man for a little bit of overlap at the same time. Like he's just moving, like, but still putting all those lines down. So it's like, just try to figure out how is that humanly possible, and you try to do your version of it and hope you don't get laughed out of the room. It's just like you give yourself a deadline and you make sure it's done by that time. You put everything you can into it, and then move on to the next page or the next book. But I came up through doing live characters at Six Flags. It's funny you ask how it started. I basically got the job from my like high school comics work, because my caricatures were total trash. But I had started an early iteration of this book that I just finished, Turbo Hawk. And thankfully, I brought some of those pages with me to sheepishly show Tom Richmond, who was running the booth at the time at St. Louis Six Flags. And he kind of took me under his wing, recognized something, thankfully, in my comics work. Because as I said, my characters were just not there yet. So he saw a little bit of promise, and over a few years, mentored me, and is still a good friend, and still awesome blog. You can get great demos and tutorials. If you ever, Jerome has become a disciple of his character techniques. So it's learning from him how to draw without a net, essentially. So like we're drawing live, no underdrawing. You just have to put down a strong either pencil line or marker line. You just can't fuss over it. You just have to put it down with confidence and gradually, you know, do a few thousand bad drawings and starts to kick in.
That's so cool, dude. I just respect the fuck out of you, man, and your art's insane. Thank you for
Thanks,
coming
brother.
on, dude.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it, man.
absolutely, dude.
Hell yeah. I can say from my own experience that Turbo Hawk is an amazing book, action-packed and amazing as any image book of the day, if not better, more cohesive. And now with a story. So it's really fun. All right, let's go over to Craig. What you got, buddy?
Hey man, you know I love the artwork. I also believe there's some art school in your background as well, right?
Yeah, and it's I'm actually a student right now at the Hartford Art School for my MFA in illustration.
Nice.
And I got my undergrad in animation, and the more I got into that, the less I wanted to actually work on the computer. Like I was in the class and I'm realizing like barely any other students are drawing. So I gravitated over to the fine arts department and just did as many comic-y fine art paintings and drawings as I could to get through that. And we just audit painting classes and befriended all the fine arts teachers. But still, you know, got my degree in computer animation, but I've only done a very little bit of it since school. But like being in that academic environment where people are so committed to just drawing constantly and studying the figure and studying painting and techniques was like really enriching. And I'm lucky to be able to come back around and jump into this MFA program.
Nice. Yeah, I have a page of yours that I got through one of the Ghost Agent Kickstarters.
Oh, thanks, man.
I love having that artwork because it's like you can just see exactly what's put on page. I don't know what it is, just seeing it like physically is a lot different. So yeah, what's your future plan? Like I love your day job. It's just kind of wacky as mine. You know what I mean? And so I love hearing about it. Like, is this like a long-term thing, or what's your future plan? Just keep like cranking out more books? Because you're like Jack Kirby, like that's how, because we all work on the project together, Rocco Jerome's project. It's like you're like the Jack Kirby of the group with the consistency and the speed and the reliability. But like, are you going to keep cranking out books and hoping to get away from caricature, or what's your future plan?
That's the goal. Like caricature is fun, but the goal is to do, you know, probably 80% comics and maybe get it down to 20% of the caricature stuff. So I get to travel with that, and it's a great way to stay warmed up, and you're around other artists and you're, you know, feeding off of their styles and their input. So it's great, but there's nothing like making a comic that somebody can actually read and it sits with them. The caricature is more like fast food, and the comics are, you know, more permanent. So that's the goal.
Nice.
But like,
Well,
I'm sure you see with your day job, it feeds into your comic stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, to a fault. Like I think, you know what I mean? Like obsessing over perfect lines and, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. It can be it can slow you down a bit. It's hard to kind of be a little bit more free. But yeah, thanks, man, so much for being here. You know how I feel about your artwork and you. So You're
Thanks
the
so
best.
much, man. Appreciate you.
No problem.
Word. All right. So we are going to open up the floor now for Meesimo. And of course, anyone that has a question, and of course, Rick and Craig are welcome back. Raise your hand in the comment section here. If you hit reactions, if you're on a computer, you can hit raise hand, or you can just drop it in the comment section here. I'm not exactly sure where it is on the phone, but anyone who wants to say that information in the comments, please put it in there. But we got our first question from Will Hoffneck from 100% Comix.
All right.
What
Hey,
up, dude?
Oh, not much. How's everyone doing? So a question for you, Meesy. Like, I mean, we've worked together. You helped out on a couple of our projects before. I always love your work. But something that I found interesting, and this is, you talk about caricature. Your style is very kind of, it's cartoony, right? It has this kind of cartoon element to it. And the thing that's interesting hearing people talk about was, your speed. Because to be honest, I didn't know that you had that speed, right? Which is interesting because what it made me think of was other famous kind of cartoony artists that are also known for speed, right? Which is the things I thought of were like Sergio, right? Sergio
Oh, yeah.
and
Yes.
Evan Dorkin, right? And these guys bust out pages like nothing else. Like it almost feels like they don't even think about it, right? They just kind of, and they also have this kind of cartoony style that's definitely their own, right? Like none of you guys look alike, but you all have a style that has that kind of cartoony element, right, to it. And what I was kind of wanting to go with that was an understanding of where do you feel kind of stylistically your style came from? Like how did you kind of develop that, or what do you see in it that you really like to kind of make those shapes and characters the way that you do?
I see in the comments, Aaron mentions Jack Davis was a huge influence, as well as all those original Mad Magazine guys. And I came into it originally through the Smithsonian comic book of Comix, which has, early Wally Wood and like Carl Barks and Jack Davis and Kurtzman. Yeah. There's some Pogo in there, like his line work is impeccable. And just cartooniness with actual weight to the characters, So yeah, I initially was this, as an only child, I would have something to keep me busy while the parents are playing cards or having dinner. And like finish eating dinner, got to keep myself busy. So I'm sketching in the corner, and one particular friend's house, she had this huge bookshelf, and this book, the Smithsonian Comic Book of Comix, always stuck out to me. So I just sit and pour through that, which came in handy when I was applying for the caricature gig. I knew who all these artists were, and even though I was trying to be Todd McFarlane / Frank Miller, I was basically also had this other cartoony side coming in, which was Mad Magazine and Cracked, and I couldn't get mad. I had an older cousin who, when he went away to college, gave me this huge box full of Mad and Cracked magazines. And that was like a full summer's worth of just pouring through that stuff. More Drucker, of course, So that and then the cartooniness later with animation, like you see how follow the threads through like the art of animation books, and like this guy mentions Mark Drucker, who mentions Ronald Searle. You see a whole generation's influenced by T.S. Sullivan as a classic illustrator, big influence on like Chris Sanders. And so you see, you follow the through lines, you see a lot of the same influential guys, Harriman with Crazy Cat, and those layouts like still look very modern, and it's so yeah, animation, seeing the art of books, and then Mad Magazine. And I don't know if I clarified it, but Tom Richmond, I was lucky enough to get trained by him. He opened up a character stand before he worked at Mad Magazine. He was still applying for Cracked at the time, and then got into Cracked, and he would work on the pages right there at the booth during in between drawings of live customers. Awesome. It's like, that's how you do it. Like he's one of the busiest people I've ever met, and he still does more than anybody you'll meet. It's like after a convention, drawing in the bathroom so he doesn't keep his family awake. It's like you just find those times where you can
Get the reps in. Get the reps in.
Get those reps in. Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks, man.
It's awesome.
And thanks for organizing all these awesome projects, man. Like, big ups.
Hey. Oh, well, thanks for always participating. I always love, like, your pages in Weapon Ec are some of my favorites. like they're so fun.
Thanks, man. Yeah, that was a blast.
Thanks so much, Will. And I agree. Thanks for doing all these great projects. Thanks for the Make More Comics Arts Grant. Is there anything you want to plug before you get off with that?
No, just everyone, just in case you didn't hear, we gave away $1,000 this year, direct cash payment, just a few weeks ago. And it actually went to this book right here, A Tiger's Tale. It's signed here by the creator. He's got the little Make More Comics Arts Grant. I just got this in the mail like yesterday. Nice. So check it out. Patrick Lugo, it's plugoarts.com, PALugoarts.com. And he does a ton of really great illustrations and really great comics and a bunch of stuff. Just a really awesome guy out of the Bay Area here in California that just pumps out a lot of great work. So check him out if you can, and keep an eye open. Go to makemorecomics.com and keep an eye open for next year's grant.
Sweet. Will you put his link in the comment section there for us?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Sweet. All right. Well, that's great, man. Thank you so much for that and for all you do. All right. We're going over to Tough Stuff himself, Mr. Kevin Delgado, who's killing it with his comics. You guys should, if you haven't, I don't know what you're doing. You got to get on Tough Stuff because it's killing it right now. All right, Kev, what up, dude?
What's up? Hey, quick question. Just what do you do between projects to kind of like step up your game? Like, what is a practice that you could impart with some of us? You know, because as artists, we always have to be evolving, and you know, we can't be complacent because that's how you get lost. So, is there any you got any words of wisdom for everyone out there?
One thing I talk about with Jerome is getting those reps in. It's like you're working out a muscle, your drawing chops, you know, it's like, so the best thing I think, the reps are life drawing. Just go sit out at a mall or something and draw people if you can't find like a actual, or you don't have time maybe in your schedule. Like if you can find live models to draw from, that's great, because then you'll see other artists and learn how they're doing it. And like, you always pick up stuff, seeing other artists do like you're solving the same problem. You see this person draws the model this way, this person starts a completely different way, but it gets a cool result. So seeing how other artists solve the same problem. Drawing from life is always like a great warm-up and a great way to like get out of your own way. Like you're not worried about your style, or you're not worried about making a good drawing. You're just trying to look and draw, and you can experiment. You don't have to publish it. You don't have to post it. You can just like, it's like training that hand-eye coordination where you're looking and drawing, and whether you're stylizing it or not, that's the best. You know, you're learning the form, like whether it's landscape or a person or clothing. Or
I'm on to
folds.
the Zoom, Lynn. It's only 8:30. I know, but I was just want to
Make
make
sure to
I
mute
got it.
yourself, y'all, if you're if you're just on here.
Here we are.
Yeah, life drawing. In between, whenever you can fit it in.
Here's Shelly. Look how pretty she looks. Yeah.
He's not wrong.
Eli, I think you have to mute my father right now.
Okay, all right.
Thanks, Kevin. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I do the same thing. I was just trying to see if there's something different I should be considering.
Yeah, you know, it's like try something you never tried before. Whether that's a technique or a subject, it's like you realize, man, I never draw cars. Like go fill a sketchbook full of cars or robots or whatever you don't ever draw. Like mix it up.
For me, it's like tools and stuff. Like I'll find like a new pen or something, or something like that.
Cool. What do you like to do mostly?
I kind of stick to brush pens and stuff, but I do like nibs. I've been playing around with parallel pen recently, just trying to see what I can come up with from that. I like traditional zips. Yeah, I don't know. I'm doing a lot more physical art than like digital, you know.
Okay.
So it's more or less just trying to make interesting pieces, I guess. I don't know how to.
Cool. What kind of
Like-
content or like what kind of subjects do you like to draw?
Anything really. I mean, I do tattoos too, so
Cool.
I tattoo draw every day, and then I work on comics. So my current comics are about cats and dogs and stuff, but I can still draw a human figure pretty well. So I don't want to get like pigeonholed into that, but it's kind of like the wave I'm riding on right now.
Cool. People love cats and dogs.
Sweet. Thanks so much, Kev.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yep, until next time. All right. All right. Now we have another question. And just because we keep getting a bunch of new people coming in here, welcome everyone. So nice to have you. We're chatting with Christian J. Meesimo right now. If you've got a question for Christian, just raise your hand. You can do that in the reaction section if you're on the computer, and somewhere else if you're on a phone. I'm sure you can find it. And then we'll be up with Shelly in about 30 minutes. Kelly, sorry, everything's crazy. All right, so now we've got a question from another amazing creator. I feel like we're filled to the brim with amazing creators today. Chris Anderson, who's got his incredible book Spectral just finished the Kickstarter a couple of days ago right now. Has another Kickstarter that he's working to get out right now that has a D&D game encased with it. I'm excited to perhaps play my first ever D&D game with that very game. I'm excited about that.
Guys gotta bankrupt me.
I know, right?
Too much good stuff.
Yeah.
All right. What's up, Chris?
Hey. First of all, a couple of house cleaning things, Misi. I am so sorry that I missed you in LA the other day. I came back from Heroes Con with a lovely souvenir of COVID, so I was unable to meet up with you.
Yeah, sorry to miss you, man. How you feeling?
Today's the first day that I tested negative, so
Nice.
15 days, yay.
Nice, wow.
I've been stuck in this room, but I got a lot of comics drawn.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that any different than normal?
No, it's really not, honestly. And also, I just wanted to thank you again for introducing me to Tom Richmond, and that book has been just amazing. It's really upped my game, and like getting those reps in, like you say. I'll try to consistently every day try to use it, you know, in just some moment of practice. So I wanted to also thank you for that.
Yeah.
But my question is, you know, I look at your stuff and I look at something like, I look at a cartoonist like, say, Toth, right? And his background or ancillary characters, they've got a life of their own. They look like they're people who have lived a life.
Mm-hmm.
They're not distracting. They're not taking away from the story, but they definitely have weight about them. They definitely have a past that you can look at his figures and immediately tell that they have a past. I see that in your work also. I know just from doing this every single day that you got to just bust the stuff out the door. And I sometimes have a problem with background characters, and I'll repeat the same ones sometimes. I just get stuck in a rut because I'm just trying to move. I'm just trying to move forward a lot of the times. You know, we got deadlines. We got to just get there. Do you find that you're drawing caricatures of other people throughout all of this time, that you draw from those people in your memory and pull them into other characters and use that part of that job to make comics?
Excellent question. I feel like yes, absolutely. Like I just have more, you know, faces running through my mind palace, thanks to drawing characters for so many years. But I'm more aware of it after talking with Tom Richmond about it, because he would do these mad parodies where all the main players are people you recognize. You know, he's parodying a show, so those are all the you know, front and center. But in the background, sometimes he would just fill it in until somebody pointed out that, like you said, like the people in the background didn't necessarily, this is earlier on, like now, as he's aware of it, it's much more even, but like you could see the life in the prominent people that he's caricaturing, but the backgrounds, when he would just fill it in, people would notice, and then he was aware of it. So we were talking about it, and then I became aware to try not to do that. And, trying to study people like Toth, where you see, like, even if it's just 3 lines over somebody's shoulder, like that person's alive,
Yeah.
So that's the goal, certainly.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that goes in with like, just if we got 5 minutes sitting at lunch before the food gets there, just look around, and it doesn't have to be perfect, but just look at the shapes and just sketch somebody. Like I used to do with lunches, and when I was in LA, we'd all meet up at Costco or someplace, animator friends, and just like do quick memory sketches as people are walking by. Like look at them and then sketch it. Don't fuss over it, and that just fills the tank. So you can reach down. And sometimes
that's a great idea.
You fill up a sketchbook, and then when you have a crowd scene, you can go back through the sketchbook and find some faces to fill in. So you're not just completely winging it, like you're doing that legwork, and then you can put it to use if needed.
Yeah, it's always something that I have to consciously think about. It's one of those things that I know that it's something that I need to get into my work more. And because I know it, I think about it, and because I'm thinking about it, it will get easier. It's just a matter of time. It's just, how this business works.
Knowing is half the battle.
It really is. And and the best advice that I was ever given was from Dan Penosian one time, who told me, like, you know if this is good or not. You don't actually, when you really think about it, what's wrong with it. You don't have to ask. You know what it is. Be honest with yourself and fix it and get better. As long as you know and keep moving forward. I was just curious if that bank just helped you, because sometimes we have to rely on muscle memory, but if you have a bigger bank, then you have more moves in your muscle memory. Jerome knows all about muscle memory, right?
Oh, yeah.
Jerome?
Try.
All right. Well, thanks, dude. I appreciate you answering the question.
Thank you, man. Yeah, good to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks so much, Chris. We'll have to get together soon since you're feeling better.
Yeah, man.
All right, sweet. All right, cool. And now next up, we got the king of the call out here for this episode, the guy who keeps getting shouted out, Mr. Jerome Cabanatan, the king of Hi-Ya, the hero of Hi-Ya. What up, dude?
And haha, I got 2 things.
The haha and the Hi-Yas.
Yeah.
Winning.
Hey, Meesy, what's up? Once again,
what's up, man? Good to see you.
Thanks again. Like, basically, I'm jumping off of what Chris was just talking about. Thank you for showing me that Richmond book. That was that was a game changer. For those of you guys that don't know, I hit up Meesy because I noticed in a lot of my stuff, like, all my faces look the same. Right. And with the amount of people that are making fun of like other artists that all their faces look the same, like we don't have to get Craig all riled up. But when people start talking about it, I wanted to fix that. So I hit up Meesy and he put me onto this book, and that's credit to Meesy because he put me on to the Richmond book, and he has he has a caricature book himself, and instead of trying to sell me that book, he gave me the other one, and I wouldn't have hated on him if he tried to sell me his book because his books are dope. But my question is kind of in line with what Chris was talking about like having that bank of faces with what you do. When you're like, you don't have, like, you can't use your sketchbook when people are talking about your speed and how you get all these like you get these pages out and all the characters look different and all the background characters look different. Do you have like automatic like go-tos when it's like it's a muscly hero, you use this kind of face? When it's a hot girl, you use this kind of face. When it's an old lady, you use this kind of face. When it's a kid, you use this kind of face. Like, do you have like a bank like that? Do you like, okay, I'm gonna draw this guy, so this guy has to look like Schwarzenegger, right? Or whatever. Do you have like a go-to?
You try to have ways of solving a problem without being formulaic. So it's like you can have a go-to, but if you do it too many times, then it's obvious, so you have to still put some kind of stink on it or spin on it. I can only rip off Jamie Hewlett profile so many times.
Okay.
It's clean. It
Oh,
looks great.
So you
every
still
time.
have to be good. So what you're telling me is you still have to be good.
Well, it's like Chris is saying, like, if you're half-assing it, and if you're half-assing it, somebody else will recognize that. So it's just trying to keep yourself honest, and you can blast through it, but then if it bugs you, it's bugging you, it's nagging you for a reason. You have to go back and tweak it a little bit. So yes,
Okay.
but also you can't completely rely on it. You don't want to hack it out. You still have to put everything into it, to make it not rote and not, Yeah.
Okay. There's no easy way. You have to be good.
Yeah.
You have to actually be good.
You still have to put the work in, even if you know how to solve it. But it's like storytelling. Every new story, it's a totally new problem. Like, I solved this story last time with this solution, and then the next story you can't use that same solution. It's like it's a whole new. So even though you can use your tool bag to solve that problem, you can't use the same solution too many times.
All right.
It's like if you're sparring with somebody and you keep using the same move, well, it worked last time, but they know it's coming, so you can't use it again in the same way.
And if it works, that means they suck. So yeah, I'm not trying to say that people suck. Yeah.
So yeah, you
All
can't
right.
level up either way without mixing it up or putting in that work.
Well, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that. And Eli, thanks for tagging me. I didn't even know this was happening.
Of course, man. Yeah, I was happy to tag every single person in the entire group.
Yeah. Thanks, Jerome. And check out Jerome's Patreon if
yeah,
you have a moment.
It's great, man.
I shouted out the.
Oh, and can you guys say the name? Is it The Mad Art of Character, a serious guide to drawing funny faces?
That's the one.
Okay.
Tom
Sorry.
Richmond,
Yes.
or Tom
what were you
Richmond.
shouting out there? What were you shouting out there, Jerome?
What was that, Jerome?
Yeah, what were you? What'd you
Oh,
have there?
I was just trying to shout out more Turbo Hawk. Yeah.
Hey.
Oh,
yeah.
It's a good book.
Yeah.
Thanks, dude.
Where can we get that, Meesimo? Off your website?
Yeah, if you go to Meesimo.com, there'll be a link to it.
Thanks so much, Jerome. And if I may add a little in there, something I used to do so much that I'll never forget how much it helped me was just going to the bar, like you said, and drawing people all night, nonstop. Like the bar I used to go to and work at, it was like, here was the bar, and then here was like the pizza like window where everyone would come just get pizza. And so like that little window that I would look through, just that little area, there'd be constant people all night. New faces, different faces, drunk faces, sober faces, wild, all these different types of faces, just all night, just doing them, just drawing those people all night. Like it's incredibly helpful to learn, because I had that problem too. The first criticism I got was from my own father, who said, all your people look the same. They all have the same mouth and the same chin. And you know what? He was right, man. And I learned from it. And it's like, so I strove to make it different from then on.
Nice.
That was my first piece of advice. And my newest piece of advice, when I was at TCAF, I got someone looked at my portfolio, basically my comics, and said that I need to learn to draw with intention, which is something that I don't always do. Sometimes I'm just like, I just start and go, and like that goes along with what you're saying. You can't solve that problem the same way each time. And by drawing with intention, you can focus and lay down. I used to not pencil at all, and the more you learn, you like have to pencil. You have to solve that problem with bones, then muscle, then skin, then beautiful clothing, and then you have this.
Yeah, we're not all Mobius that can just draw straight with ink with Masterpiece or Kim Jong-un.
No.
Yeah,
we try.
It starts with a shape, right?
Yeah.
You have to have a foundation. But Eli, I've got to say this: fathers are always right.
Yeah.
right? I mean, they know everything. They're
And there's
always correct.
right. And they don't have any type of filter when they're telling you, their
Right.
advice.
And they don't need one because it is what it is.
Because they're correct anyway.
Yeah.
Truth.
They made you and they can unmake you.
Correct. And they probably mine raised me in his image. So I'm almost perfect. So there we go.
There you go. That's the reason. Nice.
Sweet.
Well, that's a great advice that you were saying, Eli, about sketching at a bar or like the Comic-Con lobbies. You've got tons of awesome faces and people of all types. But don't do it when you're on a deadline. Shelly, I'm sure you don't want to see somebody's social media when they're supposed to be working on a book and you see them posting about hanging out in the...
Hey, and there's nothing worse than being on social media and knowing the people that have the day jobs who are supposed to be working and they're just kind of talking about something on Netflix. Yeah, we see you, people. And I'm talking about other editors too, by the way. Oh, I see you. Because I'm freelance now. So I got a list. It's right here.
All right, let's go over to our last hand up right now. We got Dr. Ben. What up, Doc? What's up, Doc? I think you're muted, bud. Yep, there you go.
There we go. Right? Straight. Okay. What's going on, Meesimo?
How's it going, buddy?
What I wanted to ask is what, I'll kind of like explain it a little bit too, so you don't like, what are you looking at, like as far as like comics or other artwork? And if you're not looking at stuff like, because I've asked other people that question, they've been like, I don't look at anything because I don't want to be influenced by anyone. And I'm like, really? What? You don't look at anything. So what are you looking at? Are you reading comics? Are you looking at sticking with like Mad Magazine stuff? Like what are you looking at, man?
I like to follow the threads back from like, well, what did this guy learn from? Like you realize 2 generations back, everybody ripped it off from Ronald Searle or somebody like that, like even like Frazetta, going back to all the classic illustrators, NC Wyatt and the like, Tom, Pyle. It's like these guys are big, like Kelly said, shapes, like composition. You nail it down with solid, clear shapes, and then you can start playing with the details. So you look at the best people to do it and try to learn from them, whether it's 100 years ago or 10 years ago. Like find the strongest you can learn from. Like just go back to the basics. Like that's why I'm out here in Hartford, Connecticut. We're going to hit up the Norman Rockwell Museum next Saturday and just like study that stuff, and apply it, put it through your own filter,
right, and
see what you can figure out. And it's I do hear it's like some people say I don't look at anything, and part of that's good. It's like if you're so into Arthur Adams that you can't draw a panel without having one of his comics open on your desk, then maybe that's a little too much. But if you need a little, inspiration, pick up a book, flip through it, and then put it down, and then do your thing. That's why I like looking at your influences that you like, and then do some life drawing, put all that other stuff away, and then find your own style that way. Like find what it looks like when you filter it through your own, point of view.
All right, that works.
And if I think
cool. Thanks, Doc.
Yeah.
Thanks,
All right. We have another question here from Clarence. What's up, Clarence? How you doing, man?
Hey guys.
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, love watching you guys do your magic on the page, and so happy to be part of this conversation today. I've actually got a question. I mean, Christian, you could answer this, but maybe Shelly might be cool with answering this as well. I wanted to know sort of, because a lot of stuff I wanted to ask, people have asked, and you guys have got answered already about inspiration and practice and things like that. But I wanted to ask something about, like, if you're getting like a book done, or when you got your first book done, how important was it to find like the right publisher for it? Like if you have a book, like I'm me being like an independent comic artist doing my own thing, and then a publisher is like, I want your stuff, I want to publish it. Is it cool to go with the first person that takes interest, or is it like really important to have like a really good publisher who knows what they're doing and have the right connections, blah, blah, blah? How important is that to just, as opposed to just getting your book out at any cost?
Well, it really depends. You know, in this day and age, which, by the way, the greatest time to make comics is now. I mean, without a doubt. But always be sure to read the fine print, and always be sure you like the people that you might be getting into business with. Because a lot of times you find out they're not who you think they are. You know, there are so many companies out there right now, large and small, who have morphed into something else over a period of 6 months or 6 years. So the best thing you can do is put your heart and soul into your work, but be very selective about who you ask to help you with it, from who you want as your inking assistant to who you want as your publisher to who you want as your editor, because everybody counts, everybody matters. And you need to work with people that keep their promises. So I would say, when you're people that are just starting out, I always say start small and make the stuff that matters to you. Always tell a story that's worth telling. And not everything you write should be published. I mean, we know that just from looking at Twitter. We're all writers if we can type, and we're all artists if we can, you know, wield a pen. But really think about
recording in progress.
Really think about what you're saying on paper, and go with publishers and bring in people to help you that believe in the same end goal and that believe in your story. Because we're living in an age where there's such an onslaught of information coming at us from all different places. So, you know, people still call stories IP. That drives me nuts. You don't have to be here if you're not interested in being part of a community that's promoting positivity. But anyway,
he's gone.
Clarence,
That person's
I
gone.
hope I helped you, you know,
Yo, what
answer
the fuck was that?
a little bit.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm sorry about that. All kinds of crazies on the internet. But thank you very much.
Yeah, and hopefully you find people that are nicer than that to work with. But always read the contract. If you don't understand anything, anyone that offers you a contract must answer your questions and hold them to it. And don't feel stupid, because there are so many points in contracts that really are sometimes worded to not make sense. Before you sign anything, make sure you understand what you're getting into, because some agreements are not to your benefit.
Thank you.
Jesus. Sorry. Sorry about that, everyone. That was insane and terrible. And I've removed that person, and that won't happen again, hopefully.
Hey, no worries. And it does happen. Eli, I knew it wasn't you, so it's all good.
It was definitely not me.
Yo, who the fuck was that dude, yo?
Donda, I don't know, man. Like, someone just came in, because like I'm just letting everyone in.
Yeah.
But all right.
Don't worry, I'm Teflon. I'm unflappable, as they say.
Oh, I believe you.
Clearly.
I believe you.
I come from sturdy stock, so trust me, it's all good. I just had hoped I could answer the question a little bit more succinctly, and I was a little thrown off my game, but not much.
Nah, you good, sis. You good.
Thanks, Donda. All right, do we have any more questions? Oh, Kevin's got one coming in. All right, what up, Kev? And then I'll leave you up here, Shelly, and then we'll segue into your part of the evening.
Sounds good.
I actually had questions for Shelly. That's okay.
Oh,
I don't want to like cut Meesimo off.
Go for it, dude.
Go for it.
Okay. Yeah. So, a couple questions, I guess. I'll make them short and sweet. A lot of us are self-creators, like we handle everything in that aspect. So what are some things that we should be mindful when we're editing our own work? That's something I was kind of wondering.
Oh yeah, everything. And by the way, as a self-publisher, I'm doing everything too. And that's always how, I mean, even when I was working for DC Comics, you know, for 23 years, I still did everything. I wrote my own ad copy. I had to chase vouchers. I'm kind of a control freak, so that was always a good thing for me. What I say to people that are doing it themselves, just remember, you know, if you need help, do not be afraid to delegate and bring someone in. There's nothing wrong with like going to an art school or an art college and looking for someone that might want to be your intern. You know, I mean, there's so many people that actually just want to be around creative people. So I think that's a great idea because it really is hard to do it all and have a day job and kickstart or crowdfund and get a significant body of work done every week. But I always say get organized. You know, you have to start by putting yourself on a schedule. And sometimes that means if you're writing and drawing, that you need to set a time for yourself where you're just drawing. For me, no lie, when I was writing Filth and Grammar, my time to write was in my pajamas in the morning. So I'd get up at 8 o'clock and I was not allowed to get my day clothes on until I wrote for an hour. And it was free writing. So it was sometimes completely inane, but I always wrote for an hour every morning. And I didn't always use everything, but sometimes I did. But you have to get yourself into a routine and you have to stick to it. Same with social media. People always ask me like, why, you know, how much is too much social media? It always feels like you're selling yourself. Well, to me, that's the best part of social media. I'm exhausted by people just rambling and trying to one-up each other and tell jokes and also the negativity all the time. So for me, 3 times a day, I go on social media. So I'm allowed to go on social media after I do my free writing hour. Then I check and see what everyone's up to. And I also promote myself and also people that are like me. So I do that in the morning, I do that in the afternoon. And then in the evenings, I probably spend the most time on social media, but so much of that is not just trying to promote like my next project, but also to talk about things that are other things I love. Because I think what makes us interesting creators, especially now in 2022, is the fact that we're combining our love for comics with other things. You know, I know a lot of you guys like wrestling. I'm really into music. French film is something else I love. So the thing that you can do that's sincere and authentic on social media is to not constantly be talking about what people expect you to talk about. Like throw some pictures out there on Instagram of like your favorite rock stars. I mean, you know, yes, that's what I do. I've been doing that since I'm like 8 years old, but you want to show that you're well-rounded and that you bring things into your work from all different places, not just from comics. That's what makes the stories unique and wholly your own. So I think it's the way you structure yourself in your day. I think you have to remember that bottom line, you need to get paid. So in terms of invoicing, whenever you start a project, whether you're hired by a big company or you're working with one editor, always remember your first conversation is about your expectations. You want to know, why are they hiring you? What do they expect? When's it due? And how much you're going to get paid. And you need all of that information in writing. Even if it's an email, it's still in writing. Preferably you get some kind of agreement. Always, first and foremost, work with people who you respect and work with people who deliver on their promises. Because a lot of people are going to give you the runaround. And I really have no patience for people in big companies that say, oh, I'm juggling 3 books. I juggled 6 monthlies, 3 original graphic novels, and I had 4 direct reports. And you know what? I take pride in the fact that 9 times out of 10, all of my people were paid on time. They always knew how to find me, and they always knew where their projects were. It can be done. I had an assistant. So that's why I mentioned to you, maybe check and see if you want to get some help, even if it's just like with a friend or like a local art student. Bring someone in to help you with the busy work, because you really don't need to spend your time filing. You don't need to spend time on the small stuff at this point, especially if you're serious about getting published. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be published right now. With crowdfunding the way it is, even if it's your mom and dad who are just like, you know, throwing in 20 bucks here and there, that's amazing. Get your name in print. Publishers will take you seriously if you take yourself seriously. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. I had two quick ones, if that's okay too. So I've been doing a lot of variant covers for various publishers and stuff. So I've grown a rapport with a lot of different writers, a lot of different editors, publishers, all that stuff. So I've primarily written my own material, but I would like to like propose to a writer my idea and that I would draw. So what should I do? What steps should I take in order to like protect my idea? Because I don't want to just approach the writer and say, hey, I want to do a book. This is what I want to do, but I want you to write it. You know, who's to say they don't just take my idea and run with it their way or whatever?
Yeah, and that's a really, you're smart to realize that, because, you know, some people ask you to sign an NDA. And listen, I've worked with people who will not sign NDAs, and that, you know, they just don't want to talk to anyone. Look, hopefully you can be straight up with someone. It's just a shame that these people feel like they, you know, entitled to just ruin it for the rest of the people. But anyway, back to your question, Kevin. So what I would say is, I would approach these people, if you can, face to face, or at least on Zoom, you know, look someone in the eye and just be like, look, I love your work. I've got my own project that I'd like you to bring you in on. And I want to trust you enough to tell you a little bit about it to see if maybe you'd want to collaborate with me. I feel like when you look someone in the eye, you're a pretty good judge of character, and people that are interested.
Sorry, I just muted everyone. So just go ahead and unmute yourself here, and then now everyone has to ask to be muted. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No worries. No, I just, you know, just be smart about who you approach, but also, you know, listen, in life, my theory is trust no one. You know, always make sure, to the best of your ability, that you know who you're getting involved with, who you're collaborating with. You know, like, ask around. I mean, if some of your friends had a bad experience with this person, you might want to think twice. It gets really hard. There are so many story ideas that have been done to death, and sometimes it's hard to prove, you know, that if you're talking about a story about a golem, you know, on the beach. I mean, I saw 2 of those on Kickstarter recently. You know, like, you have to be really careful. Yeah. And hopefully you make the right decisions, but hopefully your own drawing and your own twist on a subject is unique enough that it's your own. But yeah, it's hard to trust people. It is, but hopefully you'll be hanging out with the right people, and your instincts will tell you, and they'll prove to you, if they're interested in working with you, that they're up for it, and that they're going to give you the ownership that you need or you want.
Right. Awesome. Last question, I'll make it short. So you could tell by like all the people in this room that it's a lot of men. What can we do to get more women interested in what we're doing? Because I mean, we're kind of eliminating, you know, half the population from our work, and that's not good.
I have to confess, I was really bummed to see that there were not more women involved, because seriously, I work with so many women on my anthologies. I go out of my way to like find more people interested in comics, even like through Twitter and Instagram. But there's this wonderful scene, you know, in Europe and in South Africa, and there's so many really strong cartoonists and also writers and artists. And I think they just don't know that like groups like yours exist, you know, and I feel like we need to kind of keep tagging each other and introducing people to each other. And I do think that their books will be more welcoming if the female characters also look a little bit more like real people and not, you know, girls in bikinis with gigantic breasts, which I still think a lot of women who don't read comics, like the indie comics that I read, I still think they think of superheroes and they're offended by the way that women are portrayed in comics. They don't realize there's been more nuance, you know, and I try to explain that to people and they still point to superhero movies, you know, and they still say, oh, well, they're running in high heels. So I think it's up to people like us who know there's more to comics than just the way superheroes are portrayed by a certain group of comics people. We just have to remind people that it's more diverse now than ever, and that we need to keep encouraging people from all different backgrounds, all different regions globally, that we all just love story. You know, we love art and story, and telling it on paper through comics, to me, is the most illuminating of all the mediums. Like, I feel like we've got it made. We've got the one-on-one experience you have when you're reading a novel. We've got the art. I mean, the art is everything to me. The fact that we can actually fake the motion on the page, and that you can read it once and then you can go back and then you can study it. I mean, the amount of times that I've read my gateway drug into comics, thank you, Matt Wagner, because you're a genius. I mean, the amount of times I've read it in my life, I can't even count. And I cherish it. And in fact, the book that I just finished, Filth and Grammar, the young artist Imogen Mangels, 23, when she first started drawing the comic, I sent her my favorite comics in a care package. Also, I sent her some of her favorite American treats. She's a big fan of like pizza goldfish. So I sent her my favorite copies of Shade the Changing Man, Hellblazer, Grendel, so she could see what I was reading when I was her age and the types of work that inspired me, because she was illustrating a story about my life. And so I wanted to get her opinion, because she had never heard of Matt Wagner and, you know, some of these, some of the names, Jim Rugg, you know, the people that we know and love. And so I opened up a whole new world to her just by hiring her to draw for me. So it's pretty great. But again, I think that the good people in this group, we just all need to stick together and continue to invite other good people from different backgrounds, so that we can all share stories, because, you know, everybody has a valid story except for the people that we're interrupting.
Thank you.
Agreed. All right, let's get a nice intro here for Shelly going, and then we'll open it back up for questions and such. Well,
I know you can do better than that, Eli. I know you can do better than that hater that somehow snuck in.
Jeez, that was insane. It was like what happened the last time we did it. You know, there's such a thin line with trying to promote your event, and then, you know, but anyway, it's fine. We're all strong here.
We are. I'm cracking up just because I think it's funny.
It's crazy. I'm very sweaty now, but I'll get over that.
We can't smell you. Listen, the
that's
news
true.
is you're on your own over there. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
Oh, my vibe. All right. Well, okay. You all know Shelly. She's an amazing editor. She worked for a long time, or for about a year or two, with Comix, getting her start with one of the greatest to ever do the editing job, Diana Schutz, one of my favorite people, and you know, editing with Grendel, and then who Diana edited with Grendel. But then she moved into working with DC on the DC Vertigo line, which is one of the greatest, you know, dark noir, interesting things to happen into comics for like a really long time. And so that's amazing. It's amazing what she's done. I just learned today when I was researching about Black Crown comics. I didn't know anything about that. I feel like I really missed out.
I'm just gonna have to leave now because
well,
you are gonna love Black Crown, and
I'm
let me
excited.
tell you, I've got plenty of copies that I might send your way if you continue to be nice to me.
Well, that's the most beautiful thing about comics, is that there's so much out there that what might be the best thing for one person might be something that this next person hasn't ever even heard about.
Yeah, exactly.
right? Like you just said, you know, Imogen hadn't heard of Grendel. And, you know, I tried actually to get both Diana and Matt to pop in today to say hi, but they're both busy, but they both send their best wishes and love to you as well. So
awesome.
I tried.
That's sweet. That's cool. Well, I've been in touch with Diana quite a bit recently, and actually I was texting Matt yesterday. My favorite thing about Matt Wagner, other than the fact that I had a mad crush on him, so he's my first comics crush.
Yes.
But Matt recommends the best, absolute best novels. And I was never a huge reader, to be honest. My sister was a bookworm and I didn't want to be anything like her. So growing up, except for like the occasional Peanuts book and watching like animation, like the Peanuts, I didn't really read a lot. I got into comics in college, but at the TV shows that really charmed me growing up in the 70s were Marine Boy, Kimba the White Lion, and the Fractured Fairy Tales that were on, I think, the Rocky and Bullwinkle program.
Yeah.
Fractured Fairy Tales is what inspired Bill to do Fables, Bill Willingham. But we'll get into that later. But yeah, I was much more into dancing than reading. And I even to this day, I sort of push myself to read more prose because I still love to read comics. But Matt is the one to go to. He's recommended so many books that I've just loved. And we were just the other day, like talking about a book. But yeah, my short story, do you want me to give my short story about how I got into comics?
Yes. Yeah, I'd love to hear that. And you know, a great place to learn a lot more too is Filth and Grammar. It's not only like a guidebook, but it's also a bit of a memoir with comics, you know, and your creation.
A little bit. Well, what's funny about Filth and Grammar is that it started out as a memoir or like a manifesto, and then it sort of morphed into a couple of other things. I started it, and then I got the offer for Black Crown through Chris Ryle at IDW in 2017. So I had to put it on the side. Ran Black Crown with my husband and a bunch of the most amazing artists and writers. Real quickly, the 2-minute story about how I got into comics was, like I said, I didn't really read comics, but I went to college for film, video, and audio production. And I loved editing. You know, I'm quite petite, so I never could really do so great with camera work because I had to like stand on things to get a good shot. So I was like everybody's favorite editor. But I took a screenwriting class in my senior year, and our teacher used Peter Gross's Empire Lanes to teach us about storyboarding. Now, Peter Gross was self-publishing Empire Lanes at that point, but a year later, we both were working at Comico. And it's all because there was a kid in my class who saw my mouth drop when I was looking at Peter's beautiful artwork, which was like black and white. And to me, it looked like mini French films. I was way too much of a snob to think comics were cool back then. And so this kid says to me, hey, if you think that's cool, there are so many great comics at the comic book store in Ithaca where I went to school. He's like, you know, I used to work there. You should come check it out. And so I did. And when I walked in there, it's like Hoche Anderson had a story that he shared with Eli about how it was like, you know, walking into, I don't know what he said, but for me, it was like Dorothy and Oz. My eyeballs like popped out. There were so many amazing comics, and I didn't see a lot of superheroes. They looked like horror and dark fantasy, and like, they were just cool. And it was Love and Rockets that really got my attention because it looked punk rock. And so I always give Gilbert Hernandez, I love Jaime Hernandez too, but Gilbert's stuff really got me, pulled me in by the heartstrings. And I picked up, in fact, I pulled out my very first comics. So they were Love and Rockets, Brendel 16 and 17. These were the first things I purchased, blew my mind. Blood a Tale, which I'm shocked Eli didn't know about, but this is like, I mean, I couldn't believe that comic book art looked like this. Like, it was painterly. It was just intense. So that was by Mark DeMatteis or J.M. DeMatteis and Kent Williams. And also Elektra Assassin. I thought Bill Sienkiewicz was like from another planet. I couldn't believe, like, this constituted modern comics. So I wanted in. And I graduated from college, and at first I got work as a DJ. I was also a college DJ because I love music so much. And that got old fast because it was like AM radio. And I had Rick Astley on heavy rotation. They didn't care that I liked The Cure or David Bowie. You know, I had to just push the buttons. So I moved to Philadelphia. I walked a 1-block radius and found my new favorite comic book shop, Fat Jack's Comic Crypt. So if there are any Philly people out there, I'm a Philly girl. For me, that was it. I walked into the shop. I picked up Hellblazer. I picked up Love and Rockets. I had my pull list. And I was so lucky because the guy said that Diana Schutz was looking for an editorial assistant, and Comix was not that far away. They said, send your resume in. So I did. And I was lucky enough to get the job. Diana always says that I aced the proofreading test. And she showed me the ropes. I worked with her in person for about 8 months. And then she moved to Portland to work for Dark Horse, and she was working with me freelance. So yeah, I was at Comix until the bitter end when it went chapter 11 and then chapter 7, but I swear it was not my fault.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting learning about that because we're, you know, like I said, on the Grendel cast, we're covering the War Child stuff, and there's a whole big write-up kind of about the whole mess that happened with that, which you don't have to get into. But, you know, college radio was a big thing for me. I might not be podcasting or doing any of this if it wasn't for my own experience with college radio. My college radio wasn't even really radio. It was like transmitted over the like TV. So like you had to watch it on a TV channel.
Oh, wow.
But once I moved to Vermont, there's an amazing station there, WRUV, that like completely, you know, changed how I looked at it and made me want to do something. And then once podcasting came along, I was like, this is
oh, nice. Now, what type of music was your college radio station? I just need to know.
Like I said, it was so small that it was just, it
Was
could
it like
be
free-
anything. It
So
was
it was
free
free-
form. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I was here mixing Grateful Dead and Fish songs back and forth, trying to figure out how to make these two bands jam together. Yeah, I was like, I was trying to, you know, create new music, but you know, that's
Well,
college for it.
Have you ever edited an anthology? Because it's just like being a DJ.
Yeah, I was totally wanting to talk. The wizard that I showed, you know, that's almost 150 different creators from all over the world in that one. So
I have to check that out. That looks amazing, by the way. I have to apologize. I missed it. I've been so busy the past couple of months. You know, COVID threw a wrench into my Kickstarter. So I had 3 months of delay and had to do some fancy footwork over the past couple of months. But congrats on that. That looks fantastic.
Oh, I'll send you one, or maybe
Awesome.
we
All
can
right.
meet up or something.
And I'll send you some Black Crown books in return, because you were going to love Black Crown. The whole conceit for Black Crown was basically merging my love for music and comics. And so I created an imaginary high street, which for me was St. Mark's Place in the 1990s. So when I was working at DC Comics, I was fortunate enough to be the last editorial person to join the Vertigo line a month before it launched. So honestly, could not have had better timing. And I'm so grateful that Karen Berger, like, you know, offered me the job, because, you know, I had heard that she narrowed down her choices to 2, and I was like a wild card at the last minute. So I didn't think I even had a chance, but I was lucky. And in fact, Matt Wagner put in a good word for me. Nice. So I owe Matt a lot, even though I had a crush on him, and he was already married to Diana's sister, which was heartbreaking, but clearly I got over it.
Yeah, honestly, in my own experiences with him, he's one of the most generous, giving, open creators, especially, you know, here I am I'm just trying to make a podcast about his book or whatever. He doesn't owe me anything. And yet he like is so giving and open and has been so awesome to both Ben and I.
Well, back in those early days of Comix, I was answering the phone and I was stuffing submissions envelopes. I was putting rejection letters in. So, you know, I started a friendship with Mike Allred. He was in Germany and he was submitting his samples to Diana, and she didn't think they were quite right. So she'd say, send this person, you know, a rejection note. And I would write my own note on it. And I'd say, hey, I know my boss doesn't think you're ready, but I think your stuff's cool. And you must love Bowie because your characters look like Bowie. So we became friends, and we're still great friends because of that. He's the older brother I always wanted in comics, and I love him like family. So that's how it all started. But I was, I started on the bottom of the ladder. Comiko's basement was flooded, and very often I would be asked to grab some comps from the basement. And I wrote a short story that's in my next book about sort of what happened when I had to walk into the basement, because it was not only flooded, but there were fish in there, and there was a swinging light bulb, and the banister was broken. I'm like 5'2". I'm surprised I'm alive. But what you do for comics, it was my boss asked me to do that. I had to go. So you got to read it to believe it. But yeah.
That's already tells a story that like is perfect for comics. It's like many visuals that you could add in.
Oh, totally. Because Comix was situated in Norristown, Pennsylvania. It was an hour outside of Philadelphia. I lived in Center City, and then it was a 2-mile walk. And that was like in the winter. So my traveling companion was Rick Taylor, who was the art director of Comix, who I owe everything to. He taught me everything about art and design. So of course, I learned quite a bit at college. I was a production major, so I took 3D design. I took art classes, but Rick Taylor showed me the ropes when it came to lettering comic books and burnishing letter columns with stats and a roller and paste up and all of the early tactile things you think of when you think about putting a comic together, things that are not digital now. But we worked really hard, and our days were long, but it was such a great way to just learn trial by fire. And I cherish every memory I have of those days, including chasing Bill Willingham around the country, because he was quite elusive when it came to his Elemental scripts. And I know there are a lot of Elementals fans in your group. So that was the only superhero book that made me sit up and take notice. And I admit defeat, because I was absolutely taken in by that team. And I still think it's one of the most inventive superhero books of any age, not just the late 80s.
Yeah, that's another Comix book that we always see ads for when we're going through Grendel. I've never dove into it. I always see, like, if you go to like Spiro's Heroes, their Comix box is like, there's a lot of Elementals in there. So I'm gonna have to get back in.
It's incredible. Anyone who likes Planetary or any comic that, even some of what Grant Morrison does, frankly. I mean, Grant always has his own slant, so you can't compare. But Bill was sort of doing a meta version of superheroes long before it was even considered postmodern. And that's how I started to think he was a genius. And that's how I knew that when I eventually got to Vertigo, I was going to track him down again, because I just loved his work. I didn't know him well as a person. I knew Matt, I knew Mike Allred, I knew Steve Siegel. They were all friends. Bill was quite a bit older than me, and we maybe only talked once or twice on the phone, but he was not interested in turning scripts in. So we had a different type of relationship. It was only when we met face to face at a party one year at DC had a big party, I think in the mid 90s, we met face to face. And that's when I said, hey, I know you don't remember me. I was just a kid, but I would love for you to pitch something to Vertigo, because I just love your work. And so that's where it started.
Nice. And speaking of the Invincibles, I think that's a time to get over to our Invisibles. What did I say?
Invisibles.
Rick's gonna kill me.
Before Rick, I just have to ask him if that's Barbalith on his shirt. I've been wanting to ask that for the past hour and a half. Are you wearing Barbalith on your shirt?
I gotta ask to unmute now.
I must.
You fucking know it, Shelly. You fucking know it, Shelly.
I have been like waiting for this moment to be like, that is the most amazing shirt I've ever seen. Did you make that yourself?
Grant Morrison has a store on Amazon.
Grant has a store where you can get
a whole bunch of
t-shirt. Oh man, I had no idea.
They have sweaters, shirts, green or red.
Listen, I salute you for wearing that today. working on the Invisibles was, you know, if I'm going to say on one hand, it was a career highlight for sure. There was nothing like it. And it was as magical and mercurial and bizarre and phenomenal as you would hope. And I'm not kidding. It was just everything and then some. And he's a genius too.
Yeah,
Full stop.
that's my favorite comic of all time. Like that series changed everything for me. But a couple of questions already got answered because I definitely was going to ask about your memoir. I didn't realize that's what it became. So that's really cool. I definitely need to get that.
Well, it only became a partial memoir because of my artist. And for everyone who's drawing while I'm talking, it's okay. I don't mind. It is so important for writers to listen to their artists and treat their artists like collaborators that they are, and your editor. Sometimes editors are not good collaborators, but I'd like to think I am. The only reason Filth and Grammar had a bit of a memoir in it is because when I saw Jen Mangle's artwork, I just fell to my knees. I thought she was so talented that I couldn't wait to work with her as an art director, because editors who have no visual acuity should not be comic book editors. I've been saying that for 34 years. The best comic book editors, of course, they can correct grammar and syntax. Of course, they can keep you on a schedule. Of course, they can be your cheerleader. But the best editors know how to art direct, and they know how to look at art and say, the vanishing point's a little off. They know how to speak your language. I can't draw to save my life, but I know about foreshortening, and I know about light sources, and I know about opacity. And so I beg anyone who wants to be an editor, do the research, get to know every part of the job, understand what everyone on the team does. So it was Imogen, whose artwork was so brilliant, and I didn't have any money. So I thought, I can't pay someone to write my story, so I'm going to have to write a story for her. And that's how she started doing sequential work for Filth and Grammar. That's why the book has a subtitle, because I did want it to be sort of the kind of handbook that I wish I had when I was coming of age as a young editor. But I also wanted people to see the stories about the early days in comics. I think of them as like the halcyon days, because it was a magical time, to be in the industry when there was this great British invasion. It happened a little bit pre-Vertigo, and Karen Berger and Jeanette Kahn get all the props for bringing in people like Steve Dillon and Garth Ennis and Peter Milligan and Brendan McCarthy and Philip Bond, Glenn Dillon. They started a little bit before Vertigo launched, but that was the whole scene. And I think the Britpop music scene just kind of flourished at the same time. So it was the most exciting time to be alive and in my 20s in New York City. That's what my next book is about. But there is a little bit of that in Filth and Grammar.
That's awesome. I definitely want to get that. I was super curious because I was like, where did that memoir go? But I have a few questions, Shelly. I hope that's okay.
Hit me. That's why I'm here.
Thank you for coming on. I was so excited when Eli told me that you were coming on.
Hey, listen, thank you. And I love knowing there's a super Invisibles fan, because as you know the book, I wasn't the first editor on the Invisibles. And when I was asked to take over, I was sweating. I was sweating worse than Eli's sweating right now. I was like, because Grant Morrison, he was like, Doom Patrol. I mean, I read Doom Patrol and I felt like this guy is teaching the world how to write comics. Like, his Doom Patrol is a master class in how do I write a self-contained story? Because even though half the time I didn't know what Cartesian theory was, I didn't care. I wanted to hang out with his crew. I could connect with these misfit superheroes, and they just looked so bloody cool. So I was in. So anyone that you meet that wants to know what's the gateway to like writing, drawing, editing, coloring, anything comics, give them one of the early Doom Patrol copies, and I swear they will be hooked forever.
Yeah, Grant's my absolute favorite, like no doubt. I don't know, there's not much that I got from Morrison, but to start it off, I really want to know, like, because I have a few Invisibles questions for sure. I really want to know about like some of your favorite experiences, like with Vertigo, like some other books too, you know, like what were some other things that you really like?
Well, I think my favorite part of working on The Invisibles was that I really thought that Grant like had such a cool modern take on just like the whole like futuristic mythos of like prescient fiction. I was just starting to get into Michael Moorcock's work, and he has a whole Jerry Cornelius like
Right.
universe. And I found Grant's commentary on that to be so interesting. I knew he was younger than Michael Moorcock, and so I was getting into the whole thing at the same time. So to me, it was just like invigorating to like just get the scripts and then just see what references he would nod to, and then other things he would bring into it, whether it was like, you know, artists that were popular, like British artists that were like super famous at the time, or even just like new musical influences. So in terms of working on The Invisibles, one of my favorite moments happened when Grant was, he got really sick and he had a lot of sick cats, and he was running really, really late on deadlines. So he couldn't write the letters pages, because he used to always write the best letters pages. They were so much fun. And so we didn't want to make the book ship. And so I asked him if I could ghost write a letters page for him. And to my surprise, he said yes. So that was like epic for me to just like not only get to write a letters page, but to like write it in his style. That was pretty intense. I think working with,
you know which issue that is? I'm sorry.
I don't off the top of my head, but I'll let you know.
Okay.
Working with the different artists on the book was incredible. And I think Grant always had a really good idea of who he wanted to write or who he wanted to draw like on each story. And so I think to go from like Phil Jimenez and John Stokes, very James Bond, you know, with volume 2, Bloody Hell in America, to go from that and then to Chris Weston, who was also really like muscular and detail oriented, and then to do like Countdown to the Millennium. I feel like I got to experience like art on so many different meta levels, which included my husband's work, which true story, my husband and I have Grant to thank for our marriage, because I first fell in love with Philip's art in 1993 when I set eyes on Shade the Changing Man. It was a fill-in issue, and I was mesmerized by his cartoony style. We worked together a little bit, but not a lot, because he wasn't a monthly artist. And I remember I said to Karen, my boss, I wish Philip Bond could illustrate every book I work on. And she said, well, good luck, because he's not fast and he works paycheck to paycheck. He's like, you know, he does stuff for deadline. He just doesn't really do long form. So when it came time for Grant to talk to us about volume 3 of Invisibles, he made it really clear that he wanted Philip to do a substantial part of that storyline. And I said to Karen, are you kidding me? Then we're going to count down to the millennium, and it's going to be like 2015 until the book comes out. And she said, no, it's not, because you're going to make it happen. And I went, holy shit, oh my God. So true story. I thought, well, I love Philip's work anyway, so I'm just going to kind of like talk to him and see like, how can we work well together? And it turned out that we liked a lot of the same music. And he was in England, I was in New York. This was a time when it was very hard to find things like double stuffed Oreos in England. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to send him some cookies. I'm going to send him mixtapes, and we're going to get this book done. And so I charmed him into it and ended up falling in love with him. He moved to the States. We got married in 2000, and we're still together. And that's Grant's fault. I will still say that Grant Morrison's fault. And I have to thank him for that, because who would have thought that would have happened?
That's so cool. That's seriously so cool.
You can't make stuff up. That's like the comic book love story you can't make up.
And it's very apropos for The Invisibles as well.
Agreed.
You did so much when you like, okay. So to start this off, do you know which issue? Because you came in volume 1, right?
Well, I came in at the end of volume 1, and you're probably the only person I've ever talked to who would remember that. I wasn't really supposed to come in until volume 2, but Stuart Moore was spearheading the Matrix line. I'm sorry, the Helix line. It was originally supposed to be called Matrix, but the movie The Matrix was coming out, and they got word from, I guess, Warner Brothers that they had to change the name, so it was changed to Helix. So I was asked if I could kind of ease into the series. So I started with, I guess I started maybe, I don't know, at the tail end of volume 1 with like Mark Buckingham had an issue, sort of the end with Steve Yoel and Dick Giordano inked some of those pages. Sean Phillips did the covers.
Okay.
When I took over with volume 2, I had to fire a whole bunch of people, and some of them were my friends. It was not easy, but I just taught an editing class, and I said to my students, if you don't want to be good cop and bad cop, and if you're afraid to fire people, even your friends, don't edit. Because what people don't know about being an editor, and it's the editing I've always done, you have to do everything, the good and the bad, and you have to do it fast. It's part of the problem, I think, with comics is that when a lot of people are friends and they work together, they don't know how to deliver criticism. They don't know how to deliver the bad news. The good news is easy. I love that splash page. What a killer money line. I can't, the good stuff's easy. It's the complicated stuff. That's where the editor comes in, because the best editors are the middle people that have a one-on-one relationship with everyone on the team, from the writer, the artist, the letterer, the colorist, but also have a way of communicating and keeping everybody in the loop so that we can pass the baton and maintain a monthly schedule. It's an art and a science, and it's not for everyone. And that's why I taught a class about it, because, the way that I edited is not how people edit anymore. And I think that's a shame. I don't think people teach editing as a craft. And I think that's frankly because the industry has done a very horrible thing by forcing people into retirement and eliminating people from the top down. And I think that's why you see a lot of comic books out on the market that you can't read, because there are either too many word balloons or too many drawings that are all the same, too many medium shots, pages without close-ups. You guys were talking about art earlier and differentiating characters. Well, an editor's supposed to tap you on the back and say, you've drawn that character with their mouth open at the same width in 3 panels. Now, that's my pleasure to point that out as the editor, because that's my job. I'm supposed to be looking over your shoulder. Anything I can do to make your job easier so that all you want to do is draw all day, that's my job. So I'm giving you a really long-winded answer here, but it's just to show you that the editor is a collaborator. And on the Invisibles, I have my short box here, and I'm gonna flip through to see if I can get some of my art out. But I art directed the logos. If you remember the first cover for volume 2, number 1, it was the team with Ragged Robin and King Mob underneath an American.
I have the poster.
They're naked. Thanks. I designed the poster because Bloody Hell in America was my tagline. I mean, I ran it by Grant and he loved it. And we wanted to make it very pop art. We wanted to go different from what came before. So Sean Phillips was a good friend and was invited to my wedding, and I had to fire him off the book. But when I fired him, I promised him I would pay him back one day. And I did. I found another cover job for him, and it wasn't easy, but he understood, because the mission with volume 2 was to get a wider audience, because Invisibles volume 1 did not sell as well as it should have. So I not only had to fire my cover artist, because you want everybody judges you from the cover. So as much as I think Sean did some of his best work on that series, I needed somebody completely different. And my favorite cover artist is Brian Bolland. So I said to Grant, can we bring in Brian Bolland and Todd Klein? And then we have our complete team. And he agreed. So sadly, I had to let the letterer go on the book, and he still teases me about it, Clem Robbins. And I also paid him back, by the way. I paid him back on a book later in my career. And we're still friendly, because I think at the end of the day, you have to remember that it's a business. And that's another area where I think a lot of times when the thing you love to do, like making comics, becomes your day job, the hardest part is sometimes remembering that it's a business and you have to be professional. And that's why I think editors are important, because if you are working with your best friend or your husband, having an editor as the go-between can save your marriage, it can save your book, and it can get you on the right path to kind of keep working towards the forward imperative, because it's always about moving forward. And I love how this group earlier on talked about how you have to keep things in motion. Well, that's what comics is. It's creating motion on the page, getting the reader to move from left to right, top to bottom, towards the page turn. And as I started to say before with comics, you have that, not only you share that beautiful one-on-one that you have with a book, you know, like a prose reader, it's that one-on-one with the writer and the reader. Well, we have that with comics, but it's like a 1-on-10, because there are like between 3 and 10 people working on every comic. So how amazing is it that your reader is part of that experience, and that every word balloon and every color that's put on that page has been through a team, has changed hands, and has gone through the editor's hands at least a dozen times to make it into the artifact that it is, this beautiful piece of art. And I think that's why editors don't get enough credit when they do it right. There are a lot of editors that are paper pushers, and there are a lot of editors that don't comment on pages when the artwork comes in. And your editor should be talking to you about the pages, even if it's for 10 minutes. It shouldn't just be, thanks, got the pages. It should be, I love this panel 3. I love what you did with that wide shot. And I love how you put that character in the background. And you look at this page and I can tell it was inspired by Alex Toth. I love the heavy shadows. You need to have that communication with your editor. That's when your best book comes out. When people pay attention to what you're doing and then can help you elevate your art to the next level. I don't know if I answered your question. I'm trying to like, you know, be well-rounded here and like share my experiences, but also like remind people that editing comics is an art, and it is not for people who get their feathers ruffled easily, which is why, you know, like what happened to us earlier, whatever, to me, communicating this part of the job is like the greatest thing I can do to pay it forward for the next generation.
Well, thank you for that one. All right, I got one last one. I know a lot of people want to ask you a bunch, so I'm sorry, guys. Because you did so much when you came on for the second volume, and you changed some, like, for the better, obviously, you know, like it's the proof's in the pudding. Like you can see all these people that read it now and they say like really picks up in the second volume, and it's forever. You know, what you did is like forever. Is there any other book that you really went in and like, all right, we need to fix this? Because like
every book,
like what are some other ones, like a really big one, like any other ones, like, because like you did, like that was so huge. You came through like, we need a new cover, we need a new logo, we need new letters. Like,
well, I was lucky.
Is it usually that drastic?
If you're trying to save a book, yes. If your sales are like going downhill, Grant always envisioned The Invisibles as a trilogy, and it was important to him, you know, to like see to the end of it. I mean, he was predicting the future, you know, from reading it. We counted down to the millennium. It was Y2 chaos, and man, so many of the things that he predicted have come true, you know, and it's nuts. But you know, he was practicing white magic at the time, and let me tell you, it was bizarre. But there were strange things happening in my life as well. That how I approach The Invisibles is how I approach every book. But not every book, like you say, needs to have a complete redo. My job as the editor is to either be handed a team and then see what the team needs from me. Sometimes the writer's famous, like Neil Gaiman. I was the assistant editor on Sandman 46. And I was lucky because one of my best friends in comics was drawing it. It was Jill Thompson. So to work with her again was just the greatest. You know, she's my favorite friend and girlfriend in comics, female friend. So what was I going to do with the Sandman? Well, I wasn't going to rewrite it for sure. And Neil is impeccable, you know, with his grammar and everything. But what was interesting was that I came from Comix, where I just got a world-class education on color theory, because Rick Taylor is a colorist to this day. He was a comic book colorist. So he taught me how to color. So on weekends, I would take Xerox copies of black and white art from the Elementals, from Grendel, and I would get Doc Martin water dyes and a paintbrush, a Winsor Newton, and I would color code comics. And that's how I learned color theory. So I'm convinced Neil Gaiman liked me on his books because I came in and I fixed color. I would call him and I'd say, Neil, I think the color's too bright or too dull. It looks like it's 30% blue, and I think it should be a little bit more, have more magenta in it. And he, in fact, told me, he called my boss, Karen, and said, I'm very amazed at what Shelly is bringing to the book. I had no idea that an editor could make this kind of artistic changes, and I'm thrilled. So that's what I think I gave to Sandman. It was a time when we were starting to go from painting on paper and hand separations to digital. And I came in at a time where I was allowed to make a difference. And I worked with the colorist to elevate that in the Sandman. So I'm really proud of that. And I think Neil will always thank me for that. I came in on Shade, also made a drastic change because sadly, when I was given the reins as editor with issue 51, Chris Bichello left the book and I was devastated. Anyone here who wants a masterclass in artistry, look at Shade the Changing Man #1 through 50. And if you don't want to read it, I recommend you do, because it's one of the best written comics of all time. But watching Chris Bichello's art evolve is a masterclass in how an artist can work if they're given a monthly book. Chris went from being a very good penciler who did very pretty characters, but not distinctive. And if you look at that series, he came into his own in front of your eyes. So if you can find those early issues, I implore you to look at them, because Chris became one of the most inventive storytellers of certainly of my generation. And I was gutted because I was the assistant editor from issue, I think 34 onward. And Karen, to her credit, was very busy running the line. So she let me really dig my teeth into Shade. So I was really doing a lot more than assistant editing from the beginning, and working with Chris Bichello and Mark Buckingham, who also was a part of that series. Unbelievable. Just some of the best times of my career was just talking to Chris about art and music. And Chris, Matt Wagner, Mark Buckingham, Peter Gross, they were my formative years. They answered my questions about art. That's how I became the editor I am today. That's why I put them in Filth and Grammar. That's why I asked them for pro tips, because I don't want to take all the credit. You know, Diana taught me great things about like time management and how to really edit scripts and how to be organized with my paperwork. And, you know, Karen taught me great things too, but working with the artists and writers on those books really made me the editor I am today. And so that Filth and Grammar is a salute to them as well. I guess I'll say Terminal City is a book that I'm really proud of. If I can just give a couple more. There's so many. The late Cy Spencer has a book called Bodies that is now a Netflix. It's in production at Netflix. I'm super proud of that book. Cy Spencer is the Robert Blake of, I'm sorry, not the Robert Blake, the William Blake of comics. He is a genius and we lost him way too soon. He did books of Magic Life during wartime with Dean Armstrong, and that was incredible. He did the Vinyl Underground. He did so many comics, and he did Hellblazer short run with Sean Murphy. A really great talent, wonderful writer who, again, sadly, you know, like Tim Sale, we keep losing these seminal talents in our industry, and it's tragic. So I just remind everybody, just live for the moment and make comics. Don't stop. Don't get discouraged by the people around you who will try to drag you down. You know, they will, but you just have to, like, they're here and you're just moving forward. Just remember that. You just keep your spirits up and keep the momentum going.
Thank you so much, Shelly. Seriously.
Of course. And thank you for wearing your Barbalist shirt. Now I have to go buy one.
Absolutely.
Love it.
As Eli pointed out, Bocello, because I mean we read it, you know, so that was one of the ones I know I wasn't sure about how to pronounce it, and you said it was Steve Yowell, Steve Yowell,
Steve Yowell, yeah.
Yowell.
I think he
okay,
pronounces it Yowell because he's English and his accent is specific. So I think he pronounces it Yowell, but I call him Yowell. But yes, in my book, I actually have a little section where I debunk the age-old mispronunciations with Brian Bolland, Bill Sienkiewicz, Steve Lealoha, which was mentioned to me as the two most popular Hawaiian words, lei and aloha. That's how you say it. But Bocello everybody calls him Bacalo. You know, so like I worked on the job as well. And Gaiman, I mean, these names are, you know, they're not easy to pronounce. So happy to be of service. If that's all anybody gleans from this, that's fine with me.
I used to say Bocello too, because man, he was one of my favorites. Yeah.
Bocello.
I had to do some research.
And such a nice guy. I mean, seriously, really part of the best of my generation of comics people, hands down. Amazing.
His Generation X book was my favorite book for so long. It was like, because I was like the perfect age for that. I was like I was a teen.
Yep.
And I was like, this is
this is no problem. We will go on.
Yes.
I'm sure if there are a few more questions, I'm happy to stay as long as you guys want me to.
All right, cool. Then we'll go over to Craig, our host, and then we'll get to the people with their arms up, their hands up right here.
Nice shirt. I'm digging your shirt. I bought that for my husband for his birthday a couple of years ago.
Nice. Yeah.
Awesome.
Clearly we're big
fan of both Jim, who is just one of my favorite people on the planet, and Ed. Oh my God, Ed is the reason that I read an X-Men book, Grand Design. Ecstatics, X-Force not included, but when he did Grand Design, I just fell over.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was a proud supporter of Filthy Grammar. I even got my name in it, which I'm super happy about.
Oh, thank you.
I have a comment and then a quick question. My comment is this: is that for me, I have a shelf of like an inspiration shelf, or my go-to, and on it are things like like Bern Hogarth, Andrew Loomis, from the Scott McCloud books to like drawing comics the Marvel way. And I'm really happy to say that Filth and Grammar is on that shelf too. It's an immediate go-to, and it's really important. And I think if there's I know the room is full of creators, everyone should grab this book because it's something else for sure. My question, you're welcome. Thank you for coming and being here. My question is about lettering, because it's like the bane of my existence.
Me too.
And I had heard I thought I heard today, because I was rewatching some of the other stuff you've done on social media and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure in the kayfabe shoot you mentioned that you were learning to letter, and is that still a thing?
Oh yes. Oh yes, I am a force to be reckoned with. So I lettered quite a bit in Filth and Grammar, but I didn't give myself any credit. I didn't want to. I gave myself so much credit, for the writing and the design, but I did production. I did everything on the book. I love lettering so much. I highly recommend that editors, if they can't learn how to edit, if they can't learn how to letter, they should at least become familiar with it and try it once or twice. But I am a sucker for graphic design, and I'm a real stickler for kerning and letting, and I hate tangents. And true story, we were working on the Black Crown books. We had to start saving money, and my boss had asked if we had to let go of our house letterer, Aditya Bidikar, who was phenomenal. And the lettering I was told it had to be done in-house. And the in-house letterers were fine, but they didn't like my notes. I don't blame them. And so I told my boss, I'm like, hey, I think it'd be easier, and I'd save the aggravation of the people in-house if I lettered the books? And he said, fine. So I did. And I cannot be stopped. I just love it so much. It's, I picked up Nate Picos's book, which is tremendous. I don't know if you have it, The Essential Guide to Lettering. It will be the perfect book for your bookshelf. I implore you to get it. And lettering makes or breaks a comic, period. It makes, I am not the most fancy letterer. I am a bare bones letterer. I do just basic. I don't like a lot of fonts. I don't like a lot of fuss. I like the art to come through. So I am definitely sort of your basic lettering person. I just think it's important for people, especially writers and editors, people on the job, to know how it's done. It's not easy. And it's art, it's an art form.
Yeah, for sure. I typically use like a stock font, and like Ed is always going on about, and Jim both, about lettering and how important it is. And, you know, it's something I need to tackle. Just like I do so much of it during the day for my day job that when it comes to like sitting down and figuring it out, I'm always like, that's the last thing I want to be drawing. You know what I mean? But thank you so much for your time and everything and answering my question.
Oh, of course. No, and thank you again for the props on Filth and Grammar. I am thrilled. The response, I'm humbled by the response. And we had the best time making the book, and there's more to come, which I'm not going to say anything else about it, but yeah, let's just say I had to edit the book down from 300 pages.
Wow.
So there was a lot on the cutting room floor, and there's still a lot to be told about the art of editing. So I'm not saying anymore, for sure.
Well, if it goes where I think it's going, I'll definitely be on board. So again, go ahead, Eli. Let the crowd loose.
All right, thanks, Craig, so much. I just want to send a shout out to Mickey and the Robergs. I just got a nice phone call. They're still watching, and they're really enjoying everything. It was very nice. So shout out.
Those are my parents, by the way, and I think that Rick knows that because Rick probably saw my maiden name, and Eli saw my maiden name in comics. But it's kind of weird. My parents usually watch the taped shows, but my dad's been dying to see a live show, so this is the first one he's joined. But you know, he's also unflappable, so I'm sure he found it colorful, and and I'm glad he stuck around.
Me too. They said they're enjoying it, and they're still here. So shout out. I told him I like his work. So
awesome. He wants to be a cover artist. He's a musician and a dry cleaner. So I thought those were two good skills to have to segue into cover art. So
absolutely.
We'll see what happens next.
Soundtracks for the next Filth and Grammar. There you go.
Yeah. Well, no, he's big band. No, his music doesn't count, by the way.
Oh.
No, he gave me the love for music, but he doesn't listen to any music after the big band era. He's only about swing. He's a swing musician. So Eli, we can't let him go there.
All right. No Artie Shaw soundtrack or any Duke Ellington stuff.
He likes it, but it's not for my books.
Not for you. All right. So let's go over to Jerome with the next question. He has had his hand up, and here we go.
Hey, Jerome.
Let me unmute you since I have a fierce mute hammer now.
Jerome. Hey.
I'm gonna be quite honest with you. I don't know. I didn't know coming in much about. I've heard your name so many times in a whole bunch of interviews, but I didn't really go into it. Other than Invisibles, Volume 2. So I'm glad that you guys got to touch on that. So that's awesome. But I do want to say that like you've just been dropping so much knowledge bombs right now. I'm gonna have to do like the whole replay. You're a gangster and all that good stuff.
Thank you.
I really would like to, sometime work with you in the future, right? That however we do those things, but I'm gonna just shoot my shot here. However, as an editor, in my head, sometimes I think of an editor as, just someone that's just pushing deadlines and all that and all that editor type stuff. But it seems like you really do have a passion for everything that you're doing. And I know you like you want to push everybody, else, and you're what was it? Like you're a hype beast, right? Like you really get people to want to draw more and to do more. How much of that is you consciously doing it? How much of that is just because you said like for I don't know what other activities or sports or other things that you did when you were a kid? How much of that is just you as a person? Is it a trained thing? Because I can when you talk about it, when you talk about comics, when you talk about editing, when you talk about all the parts that you're a part of, you do seem like so passionate, and I'm sure that rubs off on everybody else that you've worked with, and that's what makes it exciting to listen to you and to hear you talk. And no matter what somebody that comes in and says that that you're still talking, is like, yes, she's still talking because we're listening. Like how much of that is trained? How much of that is just you?
It's all me. I tell people I was raised in a family business. So because my parents are listening, I'm gonna only say nice things. But listen, it's really true. I was raised in a family where everyone had a good work ethic. Both my parents worked. I think I was teased a lot in my early years at Vertigo. There were not a lot of women in editorial. So I'm a petite person. They loved to tease me and think I was a princess. I worked twice as hard as everybody because I knew it would take me twice as long to work my way up the ladder. And it just bounced off my back because my parents taught me how when you work hard and you treat people with respect, it comes back to you. And when it doesn't, walk the other way. I was been raised with very practical morals and skills. And, I spent time with working in my dad's business, not happily, but I did it. And all of those things made me the person I am. My sister, thank God, wanted to go into the family business. So that was a lot of pressure off my back. So she works with my dad, but it gave me the chance to just follow my dreams. And my dreams were always to create and tell stories. And I thought it was going to be through film, but when I discovered comics, that was it. There was no turning back. But I've been raised to be fearless and to do things my way, as long as I'm not hurting anyone, and so I've always lived by that edict because life is too short. We really don't know when our time is up. So you have to be respectful, treat people like you want to be treated. But when it comes to like my passion for comics, you can't make this stuff up. I'm not an actress, believe me, I'm a behind the scenes person. And I love it so much. And I see such potential in it. And there's nothing I like more than seeing a tiny spark of talent, whether it's in a young writer or whether it's in a letterer or colorist, and just honing in on that and tapping that person on the back and saying, hey, would you like to try this? Would you like to work with this other person? Can I ask you to maybe make this a little thicker line? Can I ask you to try this? Can you add a profile to your page? You have 6 2-shots. Why don't you cut to a profile? I think the bottom line is it comes from the heart. It's authentic because it's all I've ever wanted to do. And I've only ever wanted to spread that joy. So like everybody in this group, I have a bookshelf, and the things that are on my bookshelf, I'm going to look over there right now, and it's all the same books. It's 1,001 record covers, and I've got 2 editions because I love vinyl. I love a big record cover. I'm the kid who sometimes bought the record because she liked the art on it. I have my favorite reference tool right now is the Beastie Boys book, the big memoir book. It's a love letter to New York. That's the inspiration for my next project. I've got books on art and design, Jamie Reed, just musicians. I read all kinds of stuff. and comics greats, you know, Toth, and I love Crapex and Topi and Prado, and so many of the masters, Matati. I love Michael Moorcock. All my interests collide here, but they're best told in comics. And that's all I'm trying to do, is just hopefully spread the positivity at a time when there really is so much negativity, whether it's on Twitter, where people just love to cut each other down because there's no accountability. I hope if there's one thing I'm doing in comics, it's just proving to people who are just starting out that it is hard to break in, but it's just as hard to stay relevant, because I've been lucky. I've had a really great career, and I've met terrific people, and they've helped me here and there, but I'm still me. And sometimes people don't want to hire me because I'm a woman. And sometimes they don't want to hire me because I might make them look bad. I might make them have to work hard, because a lot of editors are on Twitter all day, just talking about watching Stranger Things 4, which, by the way, I'm going to watch eventually, but right now I'm really busy working. So I just hope I can impart what I consider are the fine tenets of editing. And first and foremost, it's finding your tribe, finding the people who are going to make the kind of comics you want to read, and then helping them get to the next level. And that's why I say, when you're an editor, it doesn't hurt to have an assistant, because even the editor needs help. I had 2 editors on my book. I had one help me with the front end because she was an English major. She gave me some great advice. And then I had another editor help me with structure, and was a book editor. I don't think I'm too good to be edited. Believe me, everybody needs a double check, and every editor needs a good proofreader. So to answer your question, I was raised well. I blame my parents. If you like what I'm saying and it inspires you to make more comics, you can thank my mom and dad.
Well, thanks, Mom and Dad. Okay, that was awesome. Thanks, Shelly. Thanks for answering. And then I just had to, you made me want to do this.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. Well, thank you so much. I like that.
All right.
It's awesome,
Okay.
Joe.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks so much, dude. Alrighty. Next up, we're gonna go to Will. I just want to second the BC Boys book is so good.
Oh man.
I read it and did the audiobook, because the audiobook was read by them, and then all the guest stars like read stuff.
I didn't even know there was an audiobook. Can I just say one thing about it? I know that a lot of people don't like Amazon. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's like both the Beastie Boys book and the Punk. I don't know if you guys know that Punk magazine best of book. Those are my go-tos. And David Lapham's Stray Bullets, gigantic Uber Alles collection. Those are the 3 books I buy people, whether they like it or not. They're all about, like, I don't know, they're reasonably priced. I mean, that most of them are under $25, but the Beastie Boys book, even if you don't like their music, I mean, they're not a favorite. I like some of their stuff. They're not one of my top 20, but the Luke Sante essay in the opening is worth the cover price, because Luke Sante was walking the streets of New York that I wish I could have. You know, in 1980 and 81, I was a teenager in suburban hell. No offense to my mom and dad. I wasn't going into New York City, and you get a feel for New York through that book, through the Beastie Boys and their memoirs, but also through Luke Sante's essay. So I highly recommend that to everybody. Even more than buying Filth and Grammar, I recommend that book. And I think it's the same price. So
It's so big, and
it is
amazing.
a love letter. Yeah, I'm gonna grab it just to prove my point. Here you go. This is it, people.
Yeah.
You must get it. It's a love letter to New York, and it has comics in it.
Yeah, and they had that Grand Royal magazine, which was really cool, and they got into publishing and stuff. All right, cool. So let's go over to Will again for another cue. Oh, I gotta unmute you.
All right, am I unmuted?
There you go.
All right. Hey, Shelly, it's awesome to meet you. I'm a big fan. Always been a big interested in your work. I do a lot of small press publishing and editing, very much, you know, in the same vein. And it's good to hear you talk a lot about the things that you do and the way you've had to work and the way you kind of have that DIY attitude, because that punk rock attitude is how I've tried to do a lot of the things that I do. Nothing on the level or scale of anything that you've ever done, of course, but it's kind of inspiring to hear that, like, that's kind of, you know, the stuff that I've done. So awesome. Thank you for that. But what I've been curious about is one of the things, and you talked a little bit about this earlier, but one of the things that I've really tried to focus on is finding new talent, specifically voices and people that would otherwise generally you wouldn't see on a comic shop shelf, right?
Yep.
And a lot of the comic, I mean, I visit every comic shop I can. I'm very big in kind of the retail. I like to understand kind of the retail aspect of the game, and it's really interesting to me to see what goes on people's shelves and why, and what sells and why. But one of the things is, and I have two quick questions here, is one is, how have you over your career, what are the things that you kind of look for when spotting new talent, especially, you know, diverse talent or voices that you are new? And then the second question off of that is what can you tell us, is there something recently that maybe you've seen in comics or with creators that pushes the boundaries of the medium? And I'd kind of like to hear what your thoughts are in that.
Yeah. Well, first of all, just to go back to your first comment, you're still young and you've got time to double or triple lap me, by the way. And DIY is the only way to go. And even though I worked for a major big two publisher, Vertigo was treated very differently than DCU. And I was lucky to have a boss that believed in me. Mm-hmm. She let me run, you know, and I'm grateful. And also I hope I did her, you know, I worked in tandem with her and helped her, you know, create such a vast and diverse line of projects. So I think that was Karen's greatest strength, was that she would bring people in sometimes that weren't from comics. And that made the Vertigo line that much richer, because they weren't all her taste, you know. And in fact, you know, she and I had very different taste in the art styles and subject matter, but that's why we made a really good team, even in the early days when I was her assistant too. But in terms of diversity, so it's going to sound obnoxious, but I think that there are a lot of lazy editors out there. And I see it on Twitter. So sorry if I'm talking about you, I apologize. It might not be you per se, but there has always been a great wealth of talent, writing and art talent from other mediums, who either would love to get into comics or don't even know comics exist, like I did back in 1987. Like, who knew? I mean, honestly, I didn't read Archie as a kid. Who knew comics were even there? So my MO always is reach farther afield. But for the people that I love in comics, like Mike Allred, oh my God, always. You know, I think you might have held Hey Amateur up earlier. Someone had Hey Amateur in their hands, and like, great example. So Black Crown was coming to an end after 2 years. We were devastated. It was honestly the greatest imprint that I ever worked on, because my husband and I created it from the ground up. We are so proud of it. My boss, Chris Ryle, who was at IDW at the time, did the nicest thing for me. He told me off the record that in the next couple of months, we're going to have to fold the imprint. So I could go out on a high, just like I came in. So I came into the imprint with Femme Magnifique, which I kickstarted, which was an anthology that saluted 50 magnificent women who changed the world. That's why I did Hey Amateur in 2019. It was one of my bigger Kickstarters. And I said to Chris Ryle, look, let me kickstart it on company time, because you're going to get the soft cover. And so, and by the way, those two books revert back to me in the spring. So wink, wink, you know, perfect time for me to make them even bigger, because anthologies are great for two reasons. You can bring in some of your friends, bring in the veteran talents, and pair them up with newcomers, which was the entire manifesto of Black Crown. I wanted to work with a small group of people. I wanted them to be my absolute favorites, And I also wanted them to be newcomers that I saw right out of the gate. And I wanted to put them together. So I put Peter Milligan and Tess Fowler together. Tess wasn't right out of the gate, but she had never worked with someone like Peter Milligan, who is very surrealistic wordsmith, unlike any other. And I did that with Teenie Howard and Gilbert Hernandez. You know, Teenie captured my attention when I read The Secret Lives of Geek Girls. She wrote a prose story, and I read some comics in that book too, but it was that story that just grabbed me. And I called her. I didn't even know she wrote comics. So I trust my instincts, but my particular brand of editing is to pair unlikely people together and see what happens on paper. Sometimes that doesn't work. It's like when you're trying to find an inker for a penciler, always sample it. So before I got into deep, I would introduce the talent together and we'd do character sketches, or we'd have that Zoom chat, or we'd have that meeting at a convention to make sure we were all on the same page. Because sometimes people aren't, you know, whether, you know, we don't want to get politics and religion to fall into art, but sometimes it does, you know, so you always want to be working with people that have the same end goal. That's part of the early expectations. But a book like Hey Amateur and a lot of the projects that I'm working on now, what I love about them is that they give me the opportunity to push myself off the high dive and start exploring artists from other regions and other cultures. And sometimes that's just by going to conventions. You know, I met so many people at Thought Bubble in England over the years. It's my favorite UK convention. Sometimes I meet artists through other writers. Lauren Bucas is a South African writer. She's phenomenal. She wrote Fairest arc for me years ago. She's the writer of The Shining Girls. Some of you might have seen that on Netflix, but she was a novelist before she was a comic book writer. And I helped her cut her teeth. You know, Marika Tamaki did a book for my young adult line back in '06. And she, you know, she got into comics. She did a comic called Skim first, which Jim Rugg recommended to me at SPX. And I checked it out and I met Jillian Tamaki that day. So I meet people through other artists and writers that I like. I take their advice. I follow their followers, but also I go into bookstores. I go into museums. I go on Instagram and I scroll and I follow people that look interesting and I buy their art. Because sometimes they only show you the really good stuff or the stuff they did 10 years ago. So sometimes I'll hire someone, you know, and have them do a pinup for me. Or I'll say to them, hey, look, I don't have any money for this project, but I've got books. Can we do a trade? I've got a hard copy of Hey Amateur and we do a swap. Because I think that we're all pretty strapped for cash right now. And believe me, I'm about to sell quite a bit of my comics collection to finance my next publishing venture. So I say that with love, because first of all, I want to give the comics away that I can live without now. I want other people to experience them. And I can't remember if I was telling Eli this or not, but I sent Imogen, or I guess I mentioned it with Rick, I sent Imogen my favorite books. So it's breaking my heart, but also it's not, because I know that the people that get these books, I'm really thinking they're going to love them. So just keep your eyes open and just trust your instinct. If there's a spark of something, dig deeper. But then always, you know, you do have to test the waters a little bit, because sometimes people, you know, they've got 1 million followers because all they're doing are commissions, and their commissions are like $3,000 each. So you want to work with people that want to work with you, but most important, that want to work, that show up and get the job done.
Yeah, that's kind of a big thing. Like I focused on a lot was like a lot of the projects that have come my way have been just capture an energy. There's already an energy there, and let me just capture it and try to hone it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's really like a lot of the focus that I've put into the pieces I'm putting together.
One thing I will say, and it's a lost art in comics now, I think the past 5 to 6 years, a lot of people are doing it themselves, which is great. But when it comes to published work, I think a lot of people forget that it's the team effort that gets things done on time and that gets them finished. So one of the things I recommended in my class is do not discount bringing in an artist to either do roughs or layouts for a penciler, or to bring an inking assistant on if it's the inker that's spending too much time on the job. And Peter Gross is one of my favorite people that I would bring in all through Vertigo, especially with a young penciler who maybe was wonderful at anatomy, but didn't quite understand how to move the camera around on the page. And Peter would do these wonderful roughs, and they would sometimes be on just like an 8.5 by 11 sheet, or he would do layouts right on the board. And the difference between those two things would be that if he would work right on the board, he'd get paid more money, because then often it would go to an inking finisher. But I highly implore editors and writers that when you're looking for artists, if you see someone's art that you just think is really pretty, but they can't really tell a story, there are ways to help that person tell a story. And if you're not a great art director, then go to an artist who is. And there are a wonderful amount of them. I mean, back in the day, I would always go to Peter Gross, but Mark Buckingham would do it. And in fact, that's how we groomed the next generation of Vertigo artists. Mark Buckingham and I would sometimes find, and with Bill Willingham, we'd find artists to do fill-in issues of Fables, or we did the book, The Dead Boy Detectives, and Bucky said he really wanted to do roughs and have someone do finishes. So he brought Victor Santos and Emma Vicelli in to do finishes. And that's how Bucky and I worked in tandem as the editor and the artist, really trying to help people, help artists achieve their artistic goals. The best way to do it is to get it done on paper and then do it timely, because, people there are a handful of people we're going to wait for. There's Frank Quitely. I'll wait for him till I'm 80. He can do no wrong. I love him. And this one's for Rick, working with him on covers. Best experience ever, best guy on the planet. And working with him on that issue of The Invisibles, just amazing. Just, again, eyeballs popped out, got sweats. It was all good. I think the only way we're going to move the industry forward is if people like us who actually care about diversity and inclusivity just keep pounding the pavement.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
Sure.
Awesome. Shelly, thank you so much. That's amazingly powerful words, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, only for you, Eli.
Hey, thank you so much. And for everyone here.
I thought you were the one that sent my dad that big check, which is why didn't you know?
Well, I had to, yeah. Well, Cosmic Lion Productions. But.
Your bar mitzvah money. Didn't you trade that Bill Sienkiewicz book?
I did. I had to, yeah.
Okay.
I sold the drugs I bought with the bar mitzvah money, and then just kidding. All right. Let's head over back to Chris Anderson and see what's going on there. What's up, buddy? Let me unmute you. Yes, the powerful hammer of mute power. There we go. Oh, we didn't unmute you. All right,
Chris.
I'm asking again.
Chris.
Hello.
There you go.
Hello.
All right.
Chris.
Hey, Shelly, how are you?
Good, thanks. How's it going?
Good. We met in 2018, maybe. I was tabling at Emerald City, and you came by, and we had a nice long chat. In fact, the button that you gave me for the crown button that you gave me is the only button that I've ever actually saved, and it's still on my bag that I carry.
The black crown button. Oh, that was Emerald City that year was amazing. I had so much fun.
It was a good one. So I've been trying to figure out how to even ask this question. I've formulated it in my head 6 or 7 times, and it always fails. So let me see if I can get through it out loud. So my career is it's an odd one. I'm luckily able to do this as an artist and a writer full time, paying LA rent somehow. I have no idea how. My name's still never even been in previews, yet I'm still doing this. So when I first started out, I've been doing it for maybe 5 years full-time professionally now. The kind of way that it seemed like the industry was set up was you got yourself on a big 2 book, you started to build a fan base, and then you went and you did your image book and you brought your fan base with you. And that's how your career sort of, tumbled down. And then all of a sudden there was this like paradigm shift where it was, no, it's the other way around now. And the goalpost just kept on feeling like it kept moving on me. And then I would just start to make relationships with editors, and talk to them and see what they were working on, if they needed me. And then all of a sudden the editors that I would get in close with would all of a sudden be gone from that company.
Yeah.
And either they would show up at another company or they would be gone altogether.
Yeah.
It happens just all the time.
Yeah.
And so I started to get like how am I going to maintain a job in this industry as an artist and a writer when everything is just in constant flux? And so I just started to do my own books and kickstart them, right?
Yeah, right.
And so now I've had 2 very successful just in the last year Kickstarters, like thank goodness, and my fan base is building. But now that the Kickstarter is over, like there's no real way to get that I can see to distribute those books now that it's over. And now the next thing for me to do is just try to figure out what my next gig is going to be. So I guess my question to you is, where do you see the industry moving towards as for people who are coming into it now, and how to build your career in it, and in your experience, because you've been doing this for a little bit, and you've got so much knowledge, and I was just wanted to pick your brain and what you think personally maybe I should do to try to keep the momentum going.
Well, honestly, I've said it before, but the best time to make comics is now because of crowdfunding.
Yeah.
And I think you've probably noticed Kickstarter is not the only game in town. And there are other outfits popping up. In fact, I've been looking into Crowdfunder. They come from a company that has been doing nonprofit crowdfunding since '09. So they have experience. They've only just recently started in the comics and music and arts space. So they're just starting out. But honestly, to me, I think the industry has just plummeted to an all-time low, but it needs to go lower. It needs to be raised for us to rebuild it. Because I think what's happened, as it's just obvious to everyone, is that it's just big corp keeps swallowing little companies whole and spitting out teeth and properties and comic books and movies, and it's going to eventually self-combust. And until it does, I don't have any interest in it. I mean, I will still follow my friends, just bought The Excellent. I think I buy Jim Rugg's Hulk Grand Design, and I buy The Excellent. And I still go to the comic book store because I want to look for new artists. So I'm seeing what's out there. But I think crowdfunding is where the people that are serious about making comics and making art are hanging out, because they can, they have a better shot of getting the work done and controlling the message. I think, though, as you build your audience, hopefully other publishers for reputable companies that are still out there, if there are any, they'll start to notice you too. Because hopefully as things get better and you start going to shows, I don't know if you're headed to San Diego, conventions are still a great place to meet people. I was telling my class that Punk's Not Dead, which is one of my favorite books of the Black Crown line, the writer actually came up to my table at Thought Bubble, which was in the fall of 2016. And he said, hey, I love your work. I've been a Vertigo fan forever. And I sent your assistant my pitch. And she said, you didn't like it. And I said, what's your name? Because I don't reject things like that. And he told me his name. I didn't recognize the name. And I said, what was the name of the pitch? And he told me, I said, I've never heard of it. He gave me the high concept. And I said, I love that. Let's work it into a one sheet. Let's talk when I'm home. That became Punk's Not Dead. Your conversations with people at conventions should be short, but make them memorable. Ask them if they want your work. Because honestly, there are so few people whose work I can carry home from a European convention. Because I have a lot of candy in my suitcase. I'm a big I'm not kidding, but I appreciate the laughter. But true story. The year later at that convention, Ram V handed me his personal project. It was a beautiful bound book. I don't remember the name of it, but I winced when I saw him walking over towards me. I winced. I said, oh no, he's going to give me his book. And he did. I opened up the book and I thought it was really beautiful. It was black and white. I said, thank you so much. I read it on the plane. He was my first email when my plane landed. I said, hey, let's talk about work at Black Crown.
Yeah.
You just need to pick your moment. You need to keep it short. Now, what he should have said to me was, can I give you my book or should I email you a PDF? And I opened it up in front of him. And that's when I said, no, I want to take this home. So an editor worth his, her, or their salt should give you that moment. And then if the moment is, you know what, a PDF is better, or can I have your business card? I still think it's important to have a business card because I always save those things. And it's also important to have a landing page. If anyone that is in the group today, if you're a writer or an editor or a letterer, it's good to have a landing page. And I had an editing portfolio that I put together when I was applying for day jobs as an editor. And I was, you know, honestly, I didn't get any reply. And even some of these people were friends and my resume would go thud. And I'd be like, what am I doing wrong? You know, so I tell you from experience that there are so many reasons why people don't want to hire you. A lot of times they're lazy. They don't know your work. They don't know you're serious. They don't know what you're capable of. So your best resource is you and getting visible. And that means on Instagram, and you don't have to be a Twitter hound, and you don't have to put your politics out there 3 or 4 times a day. Yeah. Put your brand out there in some capacity, or do what I do and put cool pictures of like Joe Strummer, or recommend Echo and the Bunnymen to anyone who's never listened to their live music because it's not like their recorded music. Put yourself out there because who you are is going to translate into your work. That's my best advice for you. And crowdfunding works, but always be good to your audience. I'll bring it back to my dad because customer service is everything. And I learned that at the dry cleaning plant because there were some days I'd have to work at the store and the customer wasn't happy if their pants were creased the wrong way. But you have to be able to communicate to your backers. And you know, from your Kickstarter campaign, I have a rule of thumb. I'm big on the word counts and the rule of thumb. If I'm doing a campaign, I am going to be P.T. Barnum. I'm a politician. So every day I am shooting out email blasts. I'm doing graphics. When my campaign ends, I'm going to catch up with my audience fortnightly, twice a month. And then when my book is being distributed once a month, I will do an update. So they're not long, but I always have a piece of art and a photo or a music Spotify playlist, something that's part of me that I give back. So there's a real method to how I kickstart and to how I communicate with people. And especially when they don't get their book or they're upset about something, always get back to people in a timely fashion. And usually that's, you know, within 48 hours, I think is reasonable. And if you can't do it, hire an intern, you know, get someone to help you, because that's going to matter, because your backers, you know, you have their money and you owe them a response. There's nothing I hate more on Kickstarter than people who don't fulfill their promise or fulfill it 2 years later and it's their third update. I think I just had update 27 on my campaign, something like that. You have to be consistent. That's really your brand, is showing up and doing the work and doing it well. And also when you mess up, fess up.
Yeah.
Someone's they're gonna catch you. Come on.
Yeah.
Who are you kidding? Always admit to your mistakes, but have a contingency plan. Mistake is in the comic. You're gonna fix it in the trade. Show it to your writer. Get it fixed. Get the lettering fixed or fix it yourself. That's what I do.
Well, it sounds like I'm on the same path as you are. So I'll let you know how things go in the next year or two. Also, are you in LA?
I am.
Okay, so there's a place on Tahunga that imports all the British chocolates. Just so you know, they're pretty new.
What's it? Does it have a name?
I don't remember the name of the candy shop, but it's right. Speaking of Robert Blake, it's right next to Vitello's.
Oh my God. That's so funny. Now you're a dangerous person to know now, because I'm gonna have to find it, and I probably shouldn't eat so much chocolate.
Yeah,
because
right
my mother
down the
is
street from my
listening.
house. Yeah, I know it's dangerous because they also have very good gummy candy, which is my thing. But
Oh
anyway,
no,
I digress.
that's not good for your dental work. So
Yeah, well, that's too late for that. Well, thank you, Shelly. I appreciate your time.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll head over to the last question here with James. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. This is going to be the last question of the night, and then we are going to head over to ending the night.
Is it possible to let Kaylee have the last question? Because Kaylee has joined us, and I know people were kind of bummed that there weren't a lot of women here. And Kaylee is one of the coolest people I've met in comics over the past few years. Is it possible for us to let her in?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, but first up.
Yes, no one pay attention to the chat. We got some crazy person in there.
Great.
Now
He's back for vengeance.
They're taking people's names and being crazy. So I'm going to ask to unmute you here, James.
Everybody hear me?
Yeah, man. We hear you.
Awesome. If we're sharing books about hip hop and other artists, I want to shout out Dillatime for anyone who's not aware.
I'm not.
So this is novel, so there's not a lot of visual elements to this, but it's all about the life and history of Jay Dilla. And there is an audiobook available on Amazon so that you can check that out at some later point. I actually couldn't get this book initially because it was sold out at every bookstore. So I ended up getting the audiobook and listening to that first before actually getting the physical book. So
I love the cover. The cover is just badass.
No, it's absolutely gorgeous. No, this is a great piece for any music lover to have.
Cool.
Absolutely. So I wanted to come in. So I'm a creator just like everyone else. I do the whole shtick, the whole 9 yards of writing, creating, blah, 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 and whatnot. But I also have the fortunate job position as the marketing component for Comix Wellspring, which is a printer that specializes in comic books.
Oh, nice.
We actually have printed a number of books, including the Wizard book, Kevin's Tough Stuff, and I'm sure many of the other people in this group, even here right now, that I'm blanking on because there's so many books that run through the shop every day. So one of the things that I try to be mindful of with marketing is representation. And that representation in a broad sense is very important in communicating to a larger audience that you can come to us with your stories, with your books, and we will help get them printed for whatever means that is, whether it's Kickstarter or otherwise. But one of the things that I definitely see with the representation of comics, even to this day, to a certain extent, is it's still very much the Superman hero, white male representation of things. And I've been trying to do what I can to shift that so that there's a difference, but I'm still a white male in America, where even with having 3 older sisters, my experience is very limited in terms of how to communicate to a non-white male audience that you can come to us with your book and you can make anything happen with that. So one of the things I really wanted to press upon was, how do you feel, in a broad sense, creators and other comics lovers can really help advocate for non-white male creators, whether it's artists, writers, editors, or otherwise, to know that there are places for their books to be made and to make their books, to encourage that making of comics.
Just the positive social media outreach is really the best bet. I mean, honestly, it's what I've been doing for the past few years, and to me, it's liberating. You know, I don't get involved in a lot of the, you know, opinionated talk about social events or politics, or even, you know, the movies, the Marvel movies. I don't go there. You know, I am all about just community outreach for comics. So there are so many places online. Broken Frontier is one that I will highly recommend. They're a British outfit, but they are so good at like keeping in touch with different collectives of artists and writers all over the world. And by following their group and all the people that are part of their collective, and just, you know, word of mouth, just spreading positivity. I mean, that's the best thing I can say. You know, it's funny, I decided to teach a 4-week class on editing comics and self-publishing kind of on a whim. I wrote the book, and you might think it was orchestrated that I was going to then teach the class, but it was only because I actually took a TV writing class on a whim. A friend just put it on social media, and I am not a writer. I don't want to be a TV writer, but the idea of the class was so engaging to me. It was 4 weeks. It was a Saturday for 2 hours and a Sunday office hour, just 1 hour of questions with the teacher. And I didn't read the fine print, but it was $250 for 4 weeks. That's, you know, 12 hours. I thought that was great. I thought it could help me because for so many years, screenwriters have hit me up because they want to make the leap into comics and they think it's easy. And I try to explain to them that it's a different discipline. And they try to explain to me that it'll help them make a movie. And I try to explain to them that's not why we make comics. So I thought if I take a TV writing class, maybe I could meet them in the middle. Well, I was so blown away by this teacher and this class, and it really did influence the way I now look at comics. But I still feel like the people that approached me had the wrong idea. And so I think you just have to be, you just have to keep looking and spread your net far and wide. And maybe for your own company, you know, maybe you really should look for people that might not know about all of the things that your company offers. You know, like I said, go to Broken Frontier, and there are so many other groups. There's a Women in Comics collective. I'm a part of some of these Facebook groups. I'm not an active participant, to be honest, but they're there for reasons like this, because I think they are also looking for publishers and printers that actually want to go the extra mile, because it matters. Some people really do want to understand how it's put together. And, you know, again, that's one of the reasons why I taught the class. And it turned out to be terrifying to teach on Zoom, but I'm really glad I did it. And the Q&A sessions were worth it, because it's kind of like what we're doing now. It's just one-on-one. And if I can impart something, even something small that you think about in 2 weeks when you're like pissed off because something didn't work out, then I feel like my job is done. And then I've paid it forward. I hope I've given you some advice. I tend to ramble and go off into many directions, but it's only because I've been preaching the same comics mentality for 34 years, you know, since I discovered them. It was like, and Eli will laugh when I say this, but Eli interviewed Ho Che Anderson and said for him as an artist, there was life before Ronin, because Frank Miller's Ronin was his big gateway drug into comics. So for me, it's Grendel 16. So life before Grendel 16 was always music and film, and then it was comics. So it's my life.
funny you mentioned Grendel, and I'll end my comments here on this note. My eldest sister, who got me into Magic the Gathering, was also a huge component of getting me into comics. And she had Grendel, she had Fable, she had Ghost in the Shell, she had Extraordinary League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. So it's one of those things where, in retrospect, it's amazing where we can find those people that help bring us to comics, and then also those can help encourage us to make the comics.
Yes.
So thank you.
Absolutely. No, you're welcome. Thanks for a great question. And again, groups like this, I mean, my God, I stumbled onto this crew. Hey, they liked Jim Ruggs, so clearly they have good taste. That's how I stumbled onto this group. And now I'm like, I feel like I want to be an honorary member if they'll have me. Eli isn't sure.
No, absolutely. I was like, I got to unmute myself now. It's like,
no, he's like nodding, and he's like, how am I going to say no, knowing that her dad is still listening?
Oh no, I want your dad in the group too. All right, James, thanks so much, dude. And I just want to say thank you from Rick and Craig and myself, from everyone in the Kayfabe group. Thank you so much, Shelly. Thank you to Meesimo, who had to leave. He had a class tonight he had to go to. He is, like he said, currently in art school again, proving that there is always something more to learn, no matter how good you are or how good other people tell you are. Shelly has a class, and I think in ending the class, or had a class, in ending the night here, if you'd like to tell us a little bit more about like where we can find you, if any Filth and Grammars are available to purchase, and where we can follow you on all the socials and stuff.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I did not go crazy over printing Filth and Grammar because it was really expensive to make, which anyone who's ever done a crowdfunder will attest to. Shipping rates go up whether you like it or not. So you're going to always be in the hole. So word of warning. And don't go crazy with the merch. Those are my two favorite things to tell people, because I'm merch crazy. I am all about stickers and pins, which I will show you here. We do these because my husband and I, we love these things. So merch is cool.
I love that part about your whole thing. Hey, I actually forgot, Kaylee did ask a question in the comments, but she said, honestly, if I had any question to wrap it up, I'd love to know more about how you've maintained such a Teflon bond. It's hard sometimes to stay composed when being met with situations like we've encountered tonight. So if you want to answer that and then finish, I know I interrupted the plugs for you.
No. Oh, the plug is no big. The plug is easy. The plug is just, we put our remaining stock on our website, which is offregister.press/store. And we do have a limited amount of soft covers, hard covers, and a digital edition. Whenever I do my Kickstarters, I keep the print run low because I want the Kickstarter version to be special. So I'm super proud of it. I love it to death. This is it. The PDF is $15. So that's going to stay as is. As far as how do I remain Teflon? Again, I'm going to blame my dad. I'm a petite person, so all my life I was kind of told just to even though I might be on the short side, to just kind of walk tall and just do my thing. So this is it. This is how I am. And I don't think people change, which is a good thing. My father raised me in his image, by the way, so it's not possible for either of us to change. And I really wouldn't want to, because it's gotten me this far. And I think it's good advice. So I just want to thank you guys for having me as a guest. It's been a lot of fun, even with the drama. So what? Doesn't bother me. I've heard worse. I've been called worse. Trust me, in many languages. So whatever. And just keep making comics. Don't let anyone get in your way. And just remember though, if you start and you're a penciler and suddenly it's not quite right, or you're not getting jobs, try another part of making comics. Editing is an art, and you really don't have to be a master form or perspective. You know, you have to like to boss people around, and that is fun. So I highly recommend it. But you guys are amazing. Thank you so much for having me. Eli, you're the best. I'll be in touch.
Definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who came. Thanks, Rick. Thanks. Actually, not thank you to everyone who came, but thank you to most everyone who came. It's been an amazing night. I truly learned something about how to market these Zooms, and you know, so it was amazing. We learned so much. I thank you all so much, and you guys know how we end these things. Don't just read more comics, be more comics. Until next month, have a great rest of your night. Later, y'all.